The story begins with a boy called Errol sitting with his family for lunch. Errol's father feels surprised by how calm his son is, saying he couldn't sleep at all thinking about what hero class he'll get. His mother also exclaims that she's excited, while his older sister feels confident that her brother will outshine all his classmates. Her mother agrees, thinking that her son will attract all the girls with his charm, which makes Errol's sister worry that he'll be taken away from her. However, Errol is more in touch with reality than his family, thinking he'll just turn out to be another average guy. In Errol's world, hero classes are gifts from a higher being granted to youngsters when they turn 10, allowing them to specialize in various skills. Once it's time for the blessing ceremony, all the students gather in school, and a priest begins with the first boy. He puts his hand on the boy's forehead, and the boy quickly sees an image of fire and hammers, confirming that he'll be a blacksmith. The boy runs back to his father, beaming in joy, and the priest starts to work on all the remaining students. Once it's Errol's turn, his sister says that he'll get a special blessing for sure, and he walks up to the priest while his family cheers. People start whispering in envy about Errol, thinking that he'll get advanced classes like his parents, Farah and Leon, who are Sword Princess and Archmage. Once Errol gets close to the priest, he closes his eyes and focuses his mind, but fails to see anything. The priest feels surprised that he doesn't have a blessing and announces that Errol is a rare case of a classless hero. Errol's family instantly loses their excitement, thinking they got totally scammed and that his fate is ruined as a talentless failure. The next day, Errol gets to practicing ordinary swordsmanship. His parents assure him that they won't kick him out of the house. Errol tells them that he's doing fine and just doesn't want to be a freeloader, while his sister promises to keep supporting him. Seeing how concerned his family is, Errol once again reminds them that he has always been practicing swordsmanship with his mother, so he can still be useful despite not having a class. However, he thinks that his mother is an awful teacher because she always blows him away in training with her incredible strength. As he finishes his explanation, Errol's mother feels happy that her son is so wise, while his father thinks that he might actually be able to get a real job. Seeing them all fawn over him, Errol gets sick of his family's attention and leaves to train. As he walks into the training ground, Errol finds two swordsman class students dueling it out with their swords. While fighting, the boys notice Errol and ask what he's doing here without a class. He calmly tells him that he's going to train just like them, but the boys tell him that they're only having fun with their swords since they don't have to train because of their class. Then, they offer to show Errol how much skill they have gained from their class, and start sparring once again. While watching them fight, Errol notices how smooth their movements are because of the swordsman class, and asks them to fight him. One of the boys laughs at his audacity for challenging him without a class, but Errol thinks that he doesn't need one, feeling insulted. The boy accepts Errol's challenge to teach him a lesson. Before fighting, the boy asks Errol to make sure he still has the protection blessing, which is a temporary shield everyone gains at birth that recharges when the user isn't receiving damage. Errol nods and confirms that he won't lose his life to the boy's powerful attacks and tells him to get ready for the duel. Enraged by his constant taunting, the boy charges at Errol and swings his sword, but he easily parries it to his shock. Then, Errol dodges another slash before locking the boy in a parry. The boy's partner thinks he's just having fun and tells him to finish the match, but he tells him that Errol isn't so easy to fight. As they continue trading parries, the boy realizes he can't beat Errol on his own, so he cheats and asks his partner to gang up on him. The other boy jumps at Errol from behind, but he senses the attack and dodges it. Watching the two boys argue with each other, Errol realizes that their class doesn't help the boys with their teamwork, and he swoops in to finish them both off. The boys notice him coming, but suddenly, Errol vanishes from their sight before coming under one of them and knocking him clean out with a jaw punch. As his teammate falls, the other boy rushes to attack Errol, but he trips on his own friend, giving Errol the chance to knock him out as well. With both boys on the ground, Errol calmly announces that he won the fight, but they get angry and claim that he attacked them while their guard was down. As they ask Errol for a rematch, he easily agrees, but before it starts, a boy behind them warns the others not to try it, reminding them that they can't make cheap excuses like that if they fail on the battlefield. After the red-haired boy tells them they're a disgrace to all swordsmen, one of the two boys tries talking back to him, but his friend reminds him of red-haired boy's high status. The redhead then walks up to Errol and asks if he's the son of Sword Princess. Princess Farah. When Errol nods, the boy praises him for learning some solid swordsmanship from his mother. However, he reminds Errol that the two swordsmen he took down are just inexperienced children as he points his sword at him, challenging him to a real fight. The boy declares that he'll prove the real power of the swordman class, while the two other boys wonder if he's the village security Captain Evan's son. The boy confirms his identity, and Errol remembers that his father used to contact his mother to hunt monsters. Errol thinks that the cute boy looks nothing like his father, and wonders if he'll also turn into a gruff-looking man. The boy's shoulders start trembling as he praises his father for being a powerful swordsman and wise mentor. He thinks it's unfair that, despite his father's great qualities, Errol's mother unfairly stole away his father's title of the village's strongest swordsman. At his jealous words, Errol realizes that the boy is just taking out his frustration on him because he hates his mother, and the redhead feels embarrassed to get called out, but asks Errol if he thinks the same. Errol confirms that his mother is the strongest person in their village, but the boy tells him that he inherited the best swordsman talent from his father, so he'll defeat Errol to prove that his family is superior. After calming down, the boy tells Errol that he already became a swordsman a year ago and has been training hard under his father ever since. With his dedicated practice, the boy thinks he has no chance of losing. However, Errol reminds him that he also received guidance from his powerful mother, so he's not going to lose against him. Both boys raise their swords to begin the fight, and the redhead attacks first. Errol parries his attack and strikes back, and they both engage in a fierce battle. Watching them exchange blows, the other two boys feel shocked that Errol is keeping up with the redhead despite being classless. Watching the boy swing his sword, Errol admits that he's much stronger than the other two, but his moves are driven by anger. Errol waits for him to slip up and attacks once he gets an opening. However, the boy unleashes a twin slice skill, which drives Errol back into a wall. The redhead feels surprised that his first slice was blocked, but notices that Errol got injured by the second. Finally losing his calm, Errol asks about the boy's ability, and he explains that it's a swordsman class skill that can't be blocked by someone classless. However, Errol feels determined that he can learn to block it with enough practice, and the redhead praises his resilience. A few days later, Errol's sister watches him snore late in the morning and tries to wake him up with a kiss. He gets up before she can touch him, coldly knocking her away with his head. Errol's sister gets offended and demands an apology kiss as he leaves his room to get breakfast. Their mother smiles and serves breakfast, and the family sits down to eat together. Errol's sister asks him if he's going to train again, and he nods. This angers her, and she tells him to take it easy and let her support him. However, Errol ignores her and gets up to leave, and his sister wonders why he's been going out to train daily ever since he returned home beaten into a pulp. Farah reassures her that Errol will be fine, explaining that they have a secret she doesn't know. She takes her daughter outside and opens a chest full of broken swords, revealing how hard Errol has been training the past few days. While his sister feels surprised, Errol's mother feels happy that her boy got inspired after dueling with other kids. Errol's determination also cheers up his sister, but she still wants to create a world where classless people like him aren't discriminated against, while her mother smiles at her noble goal. Meanwhile, in a forest, Errol whacks at a training target on a tree before backing up for an attack. He then unleashes a twin slice just like the redhead and feels satisfied with his power. While Errol thinks getting beaten up by the redhead was worth it, a goblin silently stalks him in some bushes. It jumps out to attack with its club, but Errol turns around and defeats it with a twin slice. While Errol feels happy with his skill's power, a large monster roars behind him. He turns around to report the monster's appearance to village security, but stops after hearing a panicked scream. Finding the scream familiar, Errol turns around, thinking that he doesn't have time to call security before that person gets hurt. He grabs his sword's handle and runs into the forest, mentally assuring himself that he'll be fine. Once he gets close to the source, Errol peeks from a bush and finds the redhead with a bloodied arm. Then, he notices a giant hobgoblin looming over the boy and wonders why it appeared. Errol then realizes that the redhead was also practicing like him and defeated some wild goblins, which attracted the leading hobgoblin. While the hobgoblin backs the boy into a corner, Errol gets behind it and prepares to launch his attack from the best angle. Errol takes a deep breath to prepare, and the redhead thinks that it's game over for him. The hobgoblin raises his club for the finishing blow, but suddenly, Errol cuts it down with a twin slice attack. After After the monster falls to the ground, Errol thinks he has finally mastered the technique's footwork. The redhead tries to walk, but he stumbles into Errol's arms. Noticing that the boy lost his protection blessing, Errol asks if he has any holy water to heal his wounds. The boy silently looks at his smashed water bottle on the ground, so Errol offers him his own holy water. After he drinks the water, his wounds disappear, and the redhead feels annoyed by how strong Errol has gotten. Errol notices that his energy has returned, and the boy thanks him for his water before asking again about his powerful skill. Errol calmly reminds him that it's just a twin slice, but the boy asks how he learned it without a class, knowing that ordinary people can't learn special skills. Errol explains that he pushed his training to the limits for this one. The redhead feels confused, so Errol explains that he learned the skill by adjusting to its timing and footwork. Then, Errol tells the redhead that he was the most important resource, since he helped him understand the skill after beating him up dozens of times with it. While the boy feels overwhelmed by this information, Errol tells him that he's been training the twin slice skill to defeat him in their rematch. Feeling impressed by Errol's dedication, the redhead accepts his rematch challenge. Errol asks him if he's sure, but the boy tells him it's the least he can do after he saved him and healed his wounds. Errol feels surprised that he knows how to repay favors, and the boy feels insulted by his low opinion of him. Soon, both boys get ready with their swords and begin their duel with a twin slice at the same time. While feeling shocked that Errol blocked both of the slices, the redhead gets hit by a surprise attack. He wonders what it was, and Errol tells him that he added a third slice. The redhead reminds Errol that it's called twin slice, but Errol explains that because he didn't get a predefined skill from a class, he can mold his technique into whatever he wants. He reveals to the boy that this was his first time successfully using the third strike, which leaves him even more frustrated. The redhead thinks that a swordsman's skill isn't supposed to lose to anyone, so Errol tells him he'll prove it in another match. Both boys raise their swords again, and the redhead calms down, thinking that he has a speed advantage over Errol. As both of them unleash their twin slices, the redhead watches for Errol's third slice. However, the third slice's speed still catches him off guard and knocks him down despite getting blocked. Errol points his sword at the defeated boy and tells him that this result was only to be expected. The redhead asks him why his third strike is so fast, so Errol explains that he learned the trick from him as well. Errol reveals that he controls his first two strikes to be slower and applies all his strength to the third strike to catch the opponent off guard. Feeling completely outclassed, the redhead gnashes his teeth in defeat, and Errol walks away victorious. A few days later, as Errol's family is having dinner, Farah reveals that Evan's son has left to train at Brescia. Surprised by this news, Errol asks what Brescia is, and his mother explains that it's the City of Swords. She tells him that she used to train at a guild there before her marriage, and Errol feels excited to visit the city and explore his full potential as a classless hero. 5 years later, an older Errol heads out to Brescia City on a carriage. While passing a forest, the carriage driver informs everyone that they'll soon reach Brescia after climbing a hill. A woman riding the carriage asks her fellow passengers if they're all headed for the same place. A barbarian swordsman responds coldly to her, so she asks why he's so angry. The barbarian points at her trashy outfit, so the girl explains that less clothing is best for her dual swordsman class. Both swordsmen butt heads in anger, and the carriage driver glazes the offensive power of their advanced classes. He suddenly stops the carriage as a horde of wild orcs appears in front of them, and asks the two of them to prove their power. Losing their previous bravado, both swordsmen crap themselves in fear as the orc king stands up. A commoner lady grabs the boy's arm in fear, but he shoves her and runs for his life. As the woman also escapes, the carriage driver decides to flee as well. However, Errol quietly steps up and dashes into the orc horde. As Errol starts ripping the orcs apart, the carriage driver notices his blink dash skill. However, as the orcs surround Errol, the carriage driver thinks that Errol can't escape. Suddenly, Errol spins in a tornado and cuts down all the orcs. Much to everyone's shock, the driver instantly realizes that Errol's blade dance skill is the legendary Sword Princess's signature technique. He wonders how Errol can use this technique since Sword Princess is a female class. In front of the driver, Errol avoids the Orc King's heavy weapon and jumps over his head. He drives his sword straight into the beast's skull, and it lifelessly crumples to the ground. Afterward, Errol returns and asks asks the driver to take him to Brescia. When Errol says he wants to get stronger over there, the driver points out that he's already too overpowered. An excited passenger boy asks Errol about his class, and he stuns everyone by revealing he's completely classless. It turns out that 5 years ago, Errol showed his mother the twin slice skill he learned from the redhead. His mom thought she was dreaming, but Errol explained that he was learning skills even without a class. Then, Errol asked her to teach him the sword princess skills before he went to Brescia for more training. Errol's mom was starstruck by her son's talent and quickly started bragging about him to the rest of the family. Errol's dream ends abruptly as the carriage driver wakes him up in Brescia. Errol notices all the swordsmen around him, detecting many advanced swordsmen as well. He asks the carriage driver about his class, but he acts like he's just a normal guy. Errol points out that the carriage driver perfectly understood his swordsman skills, so he must be pretty strong himself. Feeling exposed, the driver explains that he's actually an advanced holy knight, so Errol asks him why he's doing carriage rides. The driver explains that whenever he gets tired of fighting, he takes breaks by taking normal rides. Errol nods, understanding that it's important to take breaks from training as well. Then, the driver advises him to join a sword guild to start out. He reveals that the city holds many swordsmanship tournaments where he can win some good money. As the driver points out that Errol can't participate without a guild membership, he nods and agrees to the plan. Errol feels excited to fight against stronger opponents, but the driver warns him to watch out for some bad guilds out there. Once the driver leaves, Errol turns around and heads into the city. He finds the Cavalry's guild recruiting knight swordsmen and a sword road guild open to everyone. Suddenly, a girl runs to hug Errol, but falls flat on her face as he avoids her. She wonders how he dodged her without even looking, thinking he's very powerful since he can detect her. While Errol feels confused, the girl asks him if he wants to join a guild. After he nods, the girl quickly begins a sales pitch for her new guild. She shows him the contract, but Errol leaves her without a word. The girl grabs his belt and asks why he's leaving, so Errol tells her she looks too desperate. He thinks that her guild must need new members because it's weak, and the girl tries acting like they're a famous top guild. Errol refuses to get scammed, so the girl introduces herself as Lilia and offers to go on a date with him if he joins. Errol tells her he's not interested, and the girl is left speechless. He thinks she's just like his older sister, acting like hot stuff with a cutting board flat chest. Then, he asks Lilia about the biggest guild in Brescia, and she gets angered by his disrespect. Sighing to calm down, Lilia tells him that Black Blade is the strongest guild with 8 ranked swordsmen. She tells Errol about their location, and he heads over to their large headquarters. A guard approaches him, asking what he wants. Errol tells him that he wants to join the guild, so the guard tells him to take a test. Errol follows him and lines up to wait for the test registration. Once it's Errol's turn, the receptionist explains that his guild only accepts advanced classes. When Errol tells him he's classless, the receptionist rudely laughs and tells him to leave. Behind him, the other swordsmen start whispering about him, and Errol asks the receptionist if he can take the test since he's confident in his abilities. However, the receptionist refuses, saying he can't change the rules. Suddenly, the room lights up as some ranked swordsmen enter the room, and Errol decides to try his luck elsewhere. He tries visiting other guilds, but all of them refuse him without a second thought. Afterward, Errol feels discouraged since he wasn't allowed to attempt a single test. Then, he remembers that his mother gave him a letter of recommendation to help him join her old guild. At the time, Errol thought she was just being overprotective, but he now realizes that she knew he'd get rejected. As Errol decides to join his mom's guild, Lilia appears again, but he ignores her and leaves. As he walks through the city, Lilia keeps begging him to join her and save her guild. Errol continues refusing her, so Lilia offers to lick his boots to convince him. However, he leaves her in front of the disgusted townsfolk, and Lilia vows never to give up. After Errol finally finds the guild's location, Lilia catches up to him again. She tells him that he's welcome to join them and points to the massive headquarters. Errol wonders why her guild is so weak despite being so big, and she reveals that they've lost their past glory. However, Lilia is confident that she can restore the Dragon Fang guild led by the Dual Swords King. At this name, Errol recalls that his mother was also in the same guild in her youth. He finally agrees to visit, so Lilia takes him inside and leads him to a seat. Suddenly, Lilia's drunk dad pops out from the sofa, and she gets angry at him. Lilia reminds him that the doctor doctor prohibited him from drinking, and they don't have money for alcohol anyway. However, her dad doesn't care, and Errol realizes that he's the dual swords king. As Errol notices the man's missing arm, the man tells him to leave the guild since it's going to be finished soon. Lilia tries to stop her dad, but he ignores her and walks out. She tells Errol that her dad was one of the top swordsmen in Brescia, but his career ended after he lost his arm. She thinks that Errol definitely won't join their shabby guild now, but he actually decides to join. Lilia thinks she's dreaming, but Errol reveals that the other guilds will reject him anyway. She happily shows him the guild contract, and he sits down to sign it. Once done, he hands the contract to Lilia, who finally learns that Errol doesn't have a class. Lilia thinks that Errol is pranking her, so he shows her his class certificate. After taking a closer look, Lilia calmly gets up and draws a sword before threatening to give Errol the deceased class if he doesn't immediately leave the guild. He asks why Lilia wants him to leave, and she angrily points out that she needs actual swordsmen for her guild. Recalling how Errol humiliated her, Lilia gets frustrated that she got bullied by a classless piece of trash. Then, a woman named Rionur enters the room, and Lilia quickly jumps into her arms. Lilia tells her that a classless jerk tried to scam her, and Rionur instantly recognizes him. Errol feels confused that Rionur knows him, so she tells him that they're from the same hometown. She reminds him that they sparred in their childhood, but Errol still doesn't remember her. Then, Rionur tells him they met 5 years ago, but Errol says that he would never have forgotten a beauty like her. While Rionur's face turns into a tomato, Errol finally remembers fighting a red-headed boy, but Rionur reveals that she is actually Captain Evan's daughter and only child. Errol apologizes for not recognizing her, and Rionur thinks that she probably looks different because of her long hair. Thinking it's not the hair that changed, Errol looks at Rionur's chest, while Lilia asks her if he's the classless boy who defeated her. When Rionur nods, Lilia feels shocked that it's him. Rionur tells her that she won't lose this time because she's gotten much more powerful. Still upset by her previous loss, she challenges Errol to a rematch for old time's sake. The girls take him to the guild's training ground, and Lilia still feels surprised that Rionur would fight a classless nobody. However, Rionur admits that Errol is very powerful and feels determined to defeat him. Once both swordsmen get on the field, Lilia acts as the referee and starts the match. Rionur begins with a twin slice, and Errol thinks he can easily stop it. However, the slices ignore Errol's attack and hit his body. He wonders how Rionur got through, and she throws down her heavy sword. Rionur explains that the sword is 5 times heavier than usual, so he can't counter her attack with the same technique. After she reveals that her brute swordsman class boosts her attack power, Errol feels shocked and blocks her attack. He praises Rionur's incredible progress as she continues her onslaught. Errol steps back and admits that he'll lose if he continues facing her head-on. He wonders why Rionur is exposing her secrets, but she says that it's worth it to defeat him. Then, Errol tells her that she can't hit him with her speed, and she charges forward to punish him. Rionur deflects Errol's sword and strikes at his body, but it vanishes into an after-image. To Rionur's shock, he appears behind her and strikes her neck. She wonders how he dodged her attack, but Errol reminds her that it was just a shadow. Knowing that the shadow skill is a supreme swordsman technique, Rionur is stunned. She tries attacking Errol again, but he dodges everything, saying that the technique is as easy as just moving really fast. Rionur feels insulted by Errol's simplified explanation, and he tells her that it took a lot of effort to master the technique. He vanishes and strikes her with another blow, but notices that his attacks aren't damaging her protection barrier. Rionur grins smugly and reveals that power swordsmen have boosted defense. She tries attacking again, but Errol sidesteps her and hits back with a counterattack. As he reveals he learnt this counter from his mother, Rionur collapses in defeat. Watching the battle, Lilia feels shocked, but announces Errol's victory. Rionur feels frustrated that she lost despite getting stronger, and Errol praises her for her skills. However, he points out that he's just stronger than her, and Rionur starts crying. Lilia quickly rushes to comfort her, angry that Errol made her cry. He feels confused why she's crying even though he praised her, and Rionur acts like she didn't cry. Before running back to the guild, once she's inside, both he and Lilia hear her bawling about losing, even after all her training the last 5 years. Afterward, Lilia happily accepts Errol into their guild. He notices her changed attitude, but she acts like she believed in his strength the entire time. Errol remembers Lilia's aggressive attitude, but forgets it and asks her why the guild is dying. Lilia awkwardly tells him that they're in debt, and he asks how much. She calls him closer and whispers the number into his ear, but says that they can pay it all off if they win an upcoming tournament. Lilia explains that she needed 3 members to participate, and Errol asks why Rionur is staying at their shabby place. Lilia reveals that when Rionur first came to Brescia, she was rejected by all the big guilds. However, Lilia's father saw potential in Rionur and kindly accepted her into Dragonfang. Errol nods, understanding that Rionur is repaying their kindness with her loyalty. He tells Lilia that it'll be easy to pay off their debt with the tournament. However, she doesn't feel confident since they'll be facing up to 5-member enemy teams with just 3. While Lilia feels worried about the threatening enemies they're up against, Errol feels excited for the challenge. Looking forward to the tournament, Errol announces that fighting powerful opponents is the reason he came to Brescia, secretly watching them the entire time. The guild master leaves, having noticed Errol's great potential. The next day, Errol wakes up in a strange bedroom, but remembers that he's now living at the Dragonfang Guild. After heading out of the room, he greets Lilia and Rionur at the table. Lilia asks him if he slept well, and Errol nods, saying that it's been a while since he rested in a proper bed. Noticing that Rionur is completely silent, Errol wonders if she's still upset about her loss. Lilia interrupts his thoughts, saying that they're finally eligible for the guild tournament. Excited, she announces that Dragonfang is signed up and ready for battle. Curious, Errol asks her if the money from winning will be enough to cover their debt. Lilia nods and explains the competition rules. As she reveals that they need to eliminate all enemy guild members to win, Rionur feels worried that they'll face tough competition with a disadvantage in numbers. However, Lilia feels optimistic since there's a low chance they'll encounter powerful or ranked swordsmen. As she feels happy they've got 2B ranked swordsmen of their own, Errol gets confused by the strange rankings. Rionur scoffs at Errol for being so ignorant, and Lilia tells him that swordsmen's rankings start from D up to A based on their strength. She also reveals that there are only 20 ranked swordsmen in Brescia, and both Rionur and she are B ranks. Even though Errol defeated Rionur, Lilia doesn't suspect him of being a ranked because of the huge strength gap between the 2 ranks. Suddenly, she remembers that the battle pairings for the competition are about to be announced, and leaves to check them. After Lilia leaves, Rionur also gets up, and Errol asks where she's going. When she says that she's about to train, Errol asks Rionur to confirm that she's a power bladesman. He asks if she has other skills aside from her main class, so she tells him about the Guts ability, which enhances her protection barrier. Wanting to learn the ability, Errol gets up and takes Rionur's hands, as she thinks Errol is being romantic. He suddenly asks her to beat him up with her sheathed sword. Errol tells her that they can grow closer together this way, but Rionur tells him she's not freaky enough for such a relationship. Errol explains that he's just trying to learn her Guts ability. He thinks that since the ability enhances a person's capacity to endure attacks, the best way to learn it is to get repeatedly beaten up himself. Rionur reminds Errol that he can't just learn her skills because they're a blessing from the goddess. However, he reminds her that he also learned the twin slice and shadow skills, and Rionur grows silent. She takes him to the training ground, where Errol asks for her heavy sword, thinking he doesn't have the strength to wield it. Rionur gets shocked as he effortlessly pulls out the sword. Errol tells her that this is the result of countless hours of dedication, and he feels confident he can learn the Guts ability with them. Rionur finally recognizes Errol's hard work and decides to teach him the ability. As she reminds Errol she won't go easy on him, he feels glad that he got such a powerful woman from his hometown. Flustered by his comment again, Rionur raises her sword and begins their training. As they train, Lilia comes rushing down, panicking about their first opponent. She starts crying that their first match is against Black Blade, who are literally the strongest guild in the entire city. Knowing that their leader, who is called George, is a complete scumbag, Lilia thinks that he'll try to crush them without mercy. However, she still decides to fight back against her destiny and prepare their best for the tournament. When Lilia finally notices Rionur beating up Errol, she thinks that they're fighting because of bad teamwork. Rionur explains that it's just some special training, but Lilia keeps thinking that she's taking her frustration out on him. Exhausted, Errol gets up, complaining about his hunger, but Lilia tells him to take some holy water first. As the days go on, it's finally time for the tournament. Errol feels impressed by the huge coliseum and the large crowd, and he listens to some spectators whispering about their match. They feel excited to see two large guilds fight, but decide to bet on Black Blade since the shoddy Dragon Fang can't win. Lilia gets ready to give them a piece of her mind, but Rhaenyra stops her before she can make a scene. Errol is surprised that they've got betting pools at the tournament, and Lilia gets a malicious smirk as she realizes that their betting odds are 20-1. Errol gets impressed by the number, and she angrily reminds him that nobody thinks they'll win. However, Lilia thinks that the betting is a great opportunity to scam people for money if they can somehow win against Black Blade, knowing that they won't get out of debt if they lose the match anyway. Lilia reveals that she mortgaged her house and bet all their life savings on their own guild. Rhaenyra thinks that there's a higher chance they'll lose, but Lilia thinks they're already at rock bottom anyway. Suddenly, George praises Lilia for guarding her dad's guild so passionately. He asks her about the classless hero she recruited, and Lilia thinks he's trying to mock her. Lying through his teeth, George claims that he's simply sad to see the decline of his rival guild. He mocks Lilia, saying that he specifically arranged their match because everyone would be excited to see the old strongest guild versus the new strongest. George also tells her that he gave her a great chance to make money from the betting, but laughs since he knows there's no way she can beat his ranked swordsman anyway. As Lilia tells him they'll definitely win, George leaves her fuming. Errol notes how sly George is, noting his mockery through sweet words. Afterward, once it's time for the match to begin, the announcer starts setting the mood. As the crowd erupts into cheers, Errol notes that George won't be fighting them. He thinks that the leader might actually be merciful, but Lilia reminds him that all of his members are ranked anyway. Rhaenyra also thinks they're not going easy on them, so Errol gets excited to see the skills of stronger swordsmen. Soon, the announcer calls for the first match between Black Blade's Geo against Dragon Fang's classless Errol. As he walks into the arena, the crowd starts whispering about him. The crowd wonders why Dragon Fang sent a classless weakling to get humiliated, and Geo thinks the match is just a waste of his time. The announcer starts the match, and Geo instantly teleports in front of Errol and stabs him with his pole. Lilia gets worried for Errol, but Rhaenyra reminds him it's just a shadow. Seeing the shadow disappear, Geo's cocky grin falters, but he turns around and stabs the body behind him. However, he finds out that it's another shadow, and notices two Errols standing in the arena. Geo thinks that he can just take both of them out with a blink dash skill, but he is surprised to see a third one behind him. As the three shadows charge at him, Geo takes them all out, but the real Errol easily appears under him and defeats him with one blow. Geo crumples to the ground, wondering how Errol can create three shadows, but Errol tells him that his mother can create 5 of them without even trying. With Geo down, the announcer declares the victor, and the crowd roars with applause. Lilia also cheers for Errol, while Rhaenyra is shocked that Errol can take down an ranker so easily. As the medics carry Geo away, Errol thinks that he still needs more practice before he can copy Geo's critical strike. Meanwhile, the crowd feels shocked that he can outperform a swordsman while being classless. As George silently watches, the next match begins. The Black Blade's next swordsman slashes at Errol, but he easily blocks his opponent's attacks. Then, Errol easily cuts him down with a twin slice skill and wins the match. In the next match, Errol's opponent tries to use a dagger with close combat, but he appears behind him like a ghost and knocks him down. Even Errol's teammates feel surprised he won 3 straight matches, and Rhaenyra asks Lilia why she isn't fighting. Lilia knows that there's no way she can win, so she decides to keep cheering for their star. She gets Rhaenyra to cheer with her, and they watch Errol fight a shield bearer. Errol easily avoids the opponent's attacks, who thinks that he's lying about being classless. Errol praises his opponent, saying that he needs to gradually wear him down since he can't break through the shields. However, the man reminds him that a classless hero shouldn't even be able to do that. Errol tells him that he put in the hard work to get where he is, but the shield bearer thinks that classes can't be overcome with just hard work. He pretends to attack Errol with his sword, but uses it as a feint to charge with his shield. However, Errol predicts it and counterattacks with his foresight skill. The counterattack knocks the shield away, and the man is shocked, thinking he learnt it from his previous opponent. Errol thinks there's still a long way to go before he can master the counter, but he can use it in battle after seeing it. He uses the counter kick on his opponent again, who remains shocked that he can learn so quickly. Then, Errol walks over to the shield and picks picks it up, angering his opponent. He charges at Errol to punish him, but he easily sidesteps it and takes him out with his own shield counter. After the announcer declares Errol's 4th win, the crowd starts doubting if he's truly classless, and the tournament organizers demand to see Errol's class card to confirm. Errol agrees to submit it, so the announcer takes his class card, places it into the crystal ball, and everyone quiets down once she verifies he's legit. George starts feeling the pressure of loss, while even Rhaenyra starts hoping that they can win their match. Lilia feels upset that she didn't know about Errol's full strength earlier. Otherwise, she would have sold off her family heirlooms to bet even more money on themselves. Rhaenyra says that she didn't expect him to grow this much, and wonders how Errol trained the last 5 years. Meanwhile, Lilia gets ready to marry him, thinking that no matter what happens to the guild, she can always rebuild it if she has him by her side. As Lilia continues her dark plans, Errol feels unsettled by her malicious aura. Finally, the announcer introduces Black Blade's final swordsman, called Master Masamune. Errol notices that Masamune uses a katana, and Rhaenyra realizes that he's a rare samurai-class swordsman. Knowing that Masamune has never fought in public before, Lilia thinks that he's the Black Blade's ace for this tournament. As the match begins, Masamune calmly reaches for his sword, and Errol feels pressured by his calmness. Noticing Errol's hesitation, Masamune smiles and confirms that he's waiting for him to get close so he can use his ultimate technique. After hearing his provocation, Errol starts walking towards Masamune, who feels surprised. He explains that they can't just stay standing like trees for the entire match, and he also wants to see Masamune's strongest moves. Masamune chuckles, saying that Errol won't have time to react or watch if he unleashes his ultimate technique. However, Errol remains confident in his own speed and continues walking. He notices that Masamune's sword is still in its scabbard and wonders if he'll unleash the final attack in just one strike. Errol thinks about using shadows, but decides against it since Masamune is too focused to be fooled by them. He stops right in front of his opponent, knowing that one strike will decide their match. Both boys hold their breaths, and as Errol takes his final step, Masamune instantly strikes with a lightning-fast attack. However, Errol disappears right in front of him, and Masamune feels shocked since he moved so fast with his real body. Behind him, Errol praises Masamune for his speed, but tells him that the person who trained him is much faster. He unleashes a piercing tempest, which overwhelms Masamune and knocks him to the ground. Rhaenyra and Lilia are stunned as they recognize the Sword Princess's finishing technique, while the crowd feels disbelief that he won. The announcer seals the deal, and everyone starts screaming at the Black Blade for wasting all their money on the bets. Both of Errol's teammates celebrate their victory, and Lilia tries to hug Errol when he returns. He avoids her and lets her fall, explaining that it was just a reflex reaction to protect against his older sister. Then, Lilia cheers up, thinking about all the money, and Errol notices Rhaenyra with her arms open. She realizes her embarrassing pose and gets flustered, but Errol tells her that he'd like to hug her without the armor. Lilia offers to fulfill his desires, but he lets her fall again, while George gnashes his teeth, preparing to avenge this humiliating defeat. Afterward, Dragon Fang heads back home to celebrate their victory. Watching Lilia drink real alcohol, Errol is surprised that she's already an adult. Knowing he doesn't drink, Rhaenyra offers him some juice, while Lilia suddenly asks Errol to marry her. He refuses her without hesitation, saying that he'd rather marry Rhaenyra instead. Lilia is stunned and Rhaenyra gets embarrassed, thinking he's just joking. He asks her why she doesn't believe he'd like her, so she explains that everyone sees her as a tomboy meathead. Recalling her childhood, Errol agrees, but thinks that she has grown up into an attractive lady. However, Rhaenyra tells him that she's too focused on swordsmanship to care about romance. Seeing her reject Errol's advances, Lilia takes the chance to flirt with him. To her shock, he decides to practice it with Rhaenyra instead of her. Once their celebration is over, Errol goes back to training the guts ability with Rhaenyra. After a good dose of beating, Rhaenyra tells him that it won't work. Refusing to quit, Errol tells her that he needs to keep being beaten half to death in order to develop the guts ability. He says that Rhaenyra is the perfect partner for the job, but she doubts whether she can help him pull it off. Watching Errol's reckless training, Lilia complains about his careless methods. Suddenly, her dad appears, thinking that Errol is just venting his anger after losing his tournament match. When Lilia tells him that they actually won against the strongest guild, Rod thinks they must have sent some weak teammates as a joke. In response, she explains that Errol actually defeated 5 ranked swordsmen in a row. Her dad is silenced, and Lilia thinks that they can now pay off their debt with the money. However, her pessimistic dad thinks that Errol will just be stolen by a better guild with more resources, so Dragon Fang will remain dead. His negative attitude annoys even Errol, who tells him that he's just a spineless failure who quit despite having an arm he can wield a sword with. Errol's insult hits Lilia's dad's weak point, and he grabs his shirt in rage, screaming that he literally can't use half his skills now as a dual wielder. After Errol points out that he's a classless guy himself, so skills don't matter to him. Lilia's dad finally calms down and leaves after releasing him. After he leaves, Errol sighs, thinking Rod has huge potential even without half his skills. Lilia thanks him for giving her dad some motivation, and both Rioner and Errol think that Rod can return to the ring with some more encouragement, seeing them eager to see powerful skills. Lilia suggests that they should go to a dungeon. Errol doesn't know anything about dungeons, so Rioner explains that there's a huge monster dungeon right below the city of Brescia. The idea of fighting monsters gets Errol excited, and Rioner also decides to go with him. She thinks that it'll be some good training for the upcoming Sword King Cup. Once again, Errol is clueless about the event, so Rioner tells him that it's the biggest and most prestigious swordsman event in the city. To help him register, Lilia gives him a form, but Errol instantly tears it apart. Rioner is confused why he doesn't want to fight in the event, so he explains that Lilia actually sneaked in a marriage form. After getting exposed, Lilia tries to act like it was just a prank, so Errol punishes her in a chokehold. Meanwhile, a strange woman watches the scene from a crystal ball, as George asks her about the situation. When the woman informs George about their plans for the dungeon, he starts grinning deviously, planning to take revenge under the dark dungeon's cover. The next morning, Lilia tries to kiss Errol in his bed. Sensing her disturbing presence, he quickly clamps her face to protect his innocence. As Lilia feels offended by his cold attitude, Errol calls her out for being a creep. Lilia starts questioning his manhood, but Errol just ties her to the bed and leaves her screaming in the room. He knocks on Rioner's door, and she asks him if he needs anything. After getting her permission, Errol enters her room, but finds her peacefully talking in her sleep. In her dreams, Rioner proudly tells her daddy that she has become a power swordsman just like him. Watching her happy expression, Errol realizes that she's a daddy's girl. While in the other room, Rod walks in on his daughter tied up like a misbehaving dog. Afterward, they all head out for the dungeon, and Errol is surprised that it's located within the city instead of a wild cave. Noting the huge crowd gathered at the entrance, Rioner thinks that they're all going to train for the Sword King tournament. Once they arrive, Lilia explains that the teleportation portal at the entrance can teleport people to dungeon floors they've already explored before. Errol wonders if he can head to level 14 with Rioner, but finds out that the teleport only works for the floors he has cleared himself. He feels upset that he has to start with the weakest floors, so Lilia offers to take him through the shortest route with her. Rioner asks to go with them, but Lilia tries to drag Errol away so she can harass him in private. However, Errol also asks Rioner to come with them, much to Lilia's frustration. Once they're in the dungeon, the group encounters some living armors. Errol parries a hit from the first armor, but it quickly circles around him for a sneak attack. Surprised by the heavy armor's speed, he dodges the attack and slashes its helmet off. However, the armor's headless body turns around to attack, and Errol realizes that he needs to attack its legs to stop it. Lilia claps as he takes out the armor, but reels in shock when the haunted armor moves its hand. Then, Errol looks at Rioner, who has taken out her opponent. She tells him that the armor could regenerate if they don't go to the next floor in time, and Errol thinks that a regenerating magic armor is perfect for sword training. Meanwhile, Lilia acts like she's exhausted from the fight, but Errol reminds her that she just stood there like a statue. She pretends like she just wanted to let him and Rioner have some fun, and Errol asks about her class. Lilia proudly tells him that she's a fencer, and Errol recalls that a fencer can advance into the Sword Princess class. Already knowing the Sword Princess skills from his mom, Errol gets bored with Lilia and heads into level 2. However, they encounter an injured boy, who reveals that his team stumbled on a surprise trap. Rioner tells the boy to get treatment in the city, but he doesn't want to leave without saving his friends. Seeing his hesitation, she offers to save his friends in his place, but Lilia stops her. She thinks that they should scam the injured man out of some money for their help, and Errol calls her a complete fraud. However, Lilia refuses refuses to help a broke man for free, so the injured guy tries to flatter her. His fake compliments fail to work, so finally, the boy gives Lilia a bag of coins. Finally getting what she wanted, she happily accepts the money. Errol asks her if the situation seems fine to her, but Lilia tells him the money looks real. He tells her that the money isn't what's wrong, but follows the injured boy down the hallway anyway. While walking with him, Errol notices that despite the excessive bleeding, the boy is walking without a problem. He realizes that the boy isn't hurt at all and is just trying to scam them. But Errol feels excited to face whatever troubles he's going to cause. Once the boy takes them to the hidden room, he is shocked to see his friends missing. Seeing his bloody footprints in the room, Lilia tries following the trail to pick up a coin, but she activates a teleportation trap in the floor. The scammer swordsman grins, saying he was just doing his job, but the trap also teleports him with everyone else. Once they arrive in the new room, Riener notes that it's deeper than any floor she has ever been to. Meanwhile, the scammer starts panicking that he's stuck with them, and Lilia gets up to question him. Her foot kicks the gold coin on the floor, which triggers another trap that summons a strange enemy. As the enemy brandishes its sword, the boy explains that the trap has led them to the dungeon's deepest level, which has the ultimate class Sword Emperor as its final boss. As the Sword Emperor slashes at them, everyone ducks their heads. Lilia gets shocked that the slash tore into the dungeon walls from such a long distance, and Errol remains cautious against his terrifying opponent. It suddenly teleports in front of him, and Errol parries its attack. However, the sword god still drives him into a wall through the parry, while Errol feels happy that he learned the guts skill, believing that the skill gives him a fighting chance against a strongest opponent. Errol prepares to test his full strength, watching him act so calm in front of the Emperor. The girls are shell-shocked. Suddenly, Errol also teleports in front of the monster, and pushes it back with an attack. In response, the monster unleashes a gravity field that holds down the others, while Errol remains standing under its pressure. Remembering the training from his mom, he recalls how brutal her gravity field was. Thankfully, she taught him how to break through the gravity field, but not without giving him a full taste of the technique on his own body. Errol decides to show off by picking up the gold coin and slashing it in front of the Emperor. Before jumping up for the final blow, he uses the Infinite Break special skill, which destroys the armor and stuns everyone. After the battle, Errol takes a quick sip of holy water, and Riener asks him how he knew the Sword Emperor's techniques. Errol explains that his mom is actually a Sword Emperor herself, but she pretends to be a sword princess to avoid unnecessary attention. Riener thinks that she would have never challenged him with his mom's terrifying background, but Errol feels glad that he got to fight her since she led to his training and growth. Once they're done with their discussion, a portal opens up to exit the dungeon. As the group starts leaving, the scammer boy is surprised that they didn't beat him up for revenge. Lilia tells him that since Errol is happy, she'll spare his life this time. Back in the city, Rod is thinking about Errol's words at a tavern. Nearby, a group of scammers gloats about the easy mission in the dungeon, laughing at their stupid friend for getting teleported away, as one of them says that Dragon Fang will be finished after this loss. Rod asks the group what happened. The leader of the group treats Rod like a drunk old geezer, so he calmly smashes their table apart and asks again. Luckily for the runts, George stops Rod before he can tear them a new one. Rod suspects him of arranging the trap, but George acts all innocent. He tells Rod that Lilia's group stumbled upon a hidden trap, which teleported them into a dangerous area. Furious, Rod charges at George, cursing him for taking his arm and daughter away. However, just then, he hears Lilia's cheerful voice from the entrance as she comes over to party with her friends, relieved to see her safe. Rod quickly hugs her, while George is speechless that the kids survived. Errol tells him that he defeated the Sword Emperor, and Lilia explains that the boy George hired ended up exposing him for organizing this trap. George thinks that it's the kid's fault for being careless in the dungeon, and Errol agrees with his idea. As he begins to leave, Rod tells him that he'll avenge this, but George mocks him for being a useless drunkard. However, once he gets back to his room, he starts throwing a hissy fit like a salty kid, thinking back to the Dual Swords King and Sword Princess. George feels frustrated because they always outshone him. With a monster like Errol in Dragon Fang's ranks, George thinks he'll never have the chance to be the strongest in his life. Seeing his strong resentment, an evil sword calls out to him, offering to help him take revenge for a price. A few days later, in the Dragon Fang Guild, Lilia sighs in frustration. Riener wonders what's what's wrong, so Lilia explains that the preliminary matchups are out for the Sword King tournament, and she got matched up in the same bracket as Errol. Knowing that Errol would obliterate her, Lilia thinks there's no way she can qualify now. Soon, Errol also comes into the room, and Rionur explains that only the winner of every bracket can advance into the semifinals. Seeing Lilia so depressed, he comforts her by saying that she wouldn't be able to get into the finals anyway. Looking at her own matchup, Rionur feels relieved that she isn't in the same group as Errol. He nods, thinking it's a great chance for her to get into the finals and impress her daddy. Happy to show off, Rionur starts grinning, but gets embarrassed that she called her father daddy instead of dad. Meanwhile, Lilia decides not to give up yet and tells everyone to train with her at the dungeon. Errol asks her why he has to go, so she tells him that he'll handle any dangerous situations. Before she can go, her father comes in and warns her to be careful, since George could try to pull another stunt. After telling her to come back if anything goes wrong, he feels embarrassed acting like a father now, but says that he has stopped being a drunkard and is returning as a swordsman. Once it's time for the Sword King Cup, the preliminary matches begin. After her match, Lilia sighs, having lost already. Errol tells her that she wouldn't have been able to qualify even if he weren't there. She admits that she sucks, and Errol thinks it's a shame he couldn't fight her. Hearing this, Lilia thinks there's no way he actually wanted to fight her, and she tells him to be careful in his final round. Errol wonders why he needs to be so careful since he has already seen the strongest swordsman skills in the dungeon. However, Lilia reveals that his opponent possesses many unique skills. She has the magic swordsman class and can enchant her sword with magic while fighting. This confuses Errol, who points out that the tournament is for swordsmen. She explains that anyone can participate in the tournament as long as they belong to a swords guild, just like Errol, who is classless. Errol finally understands and leaves to fight his opponent. Once he gets into the ring, the woman tells Errol not to cry about her magic swordsman class if he ends up losing the match. After he tells her there won't be a problem, both of them get ready to fight. The announcer starts the match, and she immediately starts lobbing fireballs at Errol. He dodges and blocks each of the fireballs before running to get close to his opponent. Once Errol gets close, she blocks his attacks with her own sword and forces him back with a fireball. He notes that the long and short range attacks granted by the magic class are very convenient, but the girl lacks the advanced skills of either magic users or swordsmen since it's difficult to master two classes at once. After getting exposed, the girl feels offended and uses her magic to enhance her sword. Seeing her flaming sword, Errol is surprised, and the girl declares she's using the most powerful skill for magic swordsmen. She slashes at him with a fire blade, which creates a wall of flames in his direction. As Errol avoids the attacks, the girl laughs, thinking she's got the upper hand. While continuing to dodge attacks, Errol admits that the fiery sword can be a very powerful attack if it is mastered properly. The girl agrees with him, but he tells her that she's still pretty trash at using her powers. Errol keeps blocking her attacks while standing completely still, saying that she's not even a better swordsman than the pathetic Lilia. Then, Errol unleashes a twin slice attack, which blows a harsh wind that puts out the girl's flame. After leaving her unarmed, he uses the blink dash skill to teleport right behind her and knock her out, having casually dispatched his opponent. Errol thanks her for showing him a new skill, while the announcer declares his victory. Before leaving the arena, Errol wonders if a classless guy like him can also use magic. A few days later, in Dragonfang, Lilia tells her father to cheer on Errol in the finals. He keeps refusing to go, so she wonders if he's scared of seeing George at the arena. Embarrassed, Rod says that's not true, and explains that after he tried using a sword again, he realized how rusty he's gotten. He doesn't feel comfortable attending the tournament when he thinks he can't even win the finals, but Lilia gets offended since someone like her wouldn't even dream of qualifying. Then, as she keeps forcing him to go, Rod finally gets up. As they walk to the arena, Lilia thinks that Rod would have snuck in to watch the tournament later. Anyway, he wonders why she thinks that, so she reminds him of all the times he encouraged Rionur during her training. Since Rod loves seeing his guild members grow stronger, there's no way he would miss it when Rionur is in the finals. Seeing how smart his daughter has become, Rod smiles, saying that she's just like her mother. Meanwhile, at the arena, Rionur's legs tremble from anxiety. Suddenly, Errol pops out of nowhere and tells her to relax, which embarrasses her even more. He wonders why she's so nervous. So Rionur explains that this is the biggest tournament of the city, and she won't even know who she's facing before getting into the ring. Errol thinks that she's nervous about fighting him, but Rhaenyra quickly denies it. Soon, the announcer shouts that the first match is about to begin between the current champion, George, and Errol. Hearing his own name, Errol starts to leave, but Rhaenyra grabs his hand. Despite feeling flustered, she tells him to be careful, and Errol smiles before leaving. When he steps into the arena, he hears Lilia cheering for him in the audience. As she tells him to destroy the scumbag George, Errol gets shocked as George walks out, transformed into a demonic creature. Feeling George's demonic aura, Lilia wonders what happened to him, and Rod notices a strange sword in his hands. He quickly warns Errol to get away from him, saying that he's using the most powerful sword. Confused, Lilia asks what's special about the sword, so Rod reveals that the sword is sealing a powerful demon. Surprised that someone knows about his origins, the demon George wonders if Rod is from the royal palace. Since George doesn't remember him, Rod thinks that the demon has completely taken over his mind. He recalls that after the original sword god killed so many demons with his sword, it absorbed their resentment and transformed into an evil weapon. However, the sword was sealed in the royal treasury, and the demon laughs that someone foolish has unsealed it. Since the previous royal family died centuries ago, the demon thinks he's free to wreak havoc as he pleases. Happy that he finally got freedom after centuries of waiting patiently, the demon announces that his name is Duagelda. Rhaenyra feels surprised by his name, and Errol asks who this guy is. She gets annoyed that he never paid attention in history class, and explains that Duagelda is a demon who summoned evil power from the higher realm. As the rest of the audience realizes they're dealing with Duagelda, they all get terrified since the demon was capable of destroying entire cities in the legend. Scared of their lives, all of the audience flees the arena, while Duagelda feels proud that he's causing so much fear. However, he doesn't feel satisfied yet, and creates a dark formation which releases a dense evil aura. The aura flares up and turns the sky dark, and creates a barrier around the arena gates that prevents anyone from escaping. Rod wonders if the demon is planning to end them all, while Duagelda gets ready to enjoy a lovely massacre. However, Errol gets ready to fight him. Surprising the demon with his courage, Errol confidently tells him that he can defeat him, since the demon was defeated by a sword god in the past. Duagelda laughs, thinking that there are no more sword gods in this world anyway. However, Errol tells Duagelda that his mom is a sword god herself, but he can defeat the pitiful demon on his own anyway. Duagelda thinks that Errol is just deluded, but gets shocked when he attacks with blinding speed. Realizing that Errol just used a sword god's skill, the demon gets scared of him. While Errol starts running circles around the demon, he suddenly smiles, reminding him that he's also in the body of a very powerful swordsman. Duagelda jumps up, shocking Errol with his speed, and knocks him down with a powerful strike. The demon thinks he has won, but when the smoke clears, he is shocked to see Errol completely unharmed. Errol explains that he survived the attack because of his gut skill, and Duagelda tries attacking again. Errol blocks the attack and uses the Infinity Break skill. The skill creates multiple clones of Errol who gang up on Duagelda together, forcing him back with a billion slashes. After being humbled, Duagelda admits that Errol is a true sword god, but Errol reveals that he's actually classless and sends the demon away. After Duagelda lands on the ground, unconscious, Errol tries approaching him to see if he was defeated. He feels confident that the demon can't hurt him with such heavy injuries, while the audience is shocked that someone as strong as Errol still exists in their world. As Errol leaves Duagelda on the ground, the demon decides to escape him to avoid getting sealed again. Knowing he can only escape by possessing someone else, he searches through the audience and decides to control Rod since he's the most powerful after Errol. Nearby, as Lilia is celebrating Errol's win, Rhaenyra wonders if the tournament will still continue. Suddenly, the sword in George's hands frees itself before launching towards Rhaenyra. Errol quickly protects her, but the sword shoots towards Lilia instead. Rod rushes to save his daughter, but when the smoke clears, he points a sword at her throat, possessed by Duagelda. Duagelda commands Lilia to stand up, and Errol realizes that the evil sword is actually the demon's true body. Duagelda laughs, saying it's too late to figure it out now, but Errol thinks he can just defeat it again. However, the demon warns him that he'll kill his wife if he attacks, which leaves Errol confused. He tells Duagelda that there's no way he'd marry a talentless airhead like Lilia, but the demon thinks Errol is lying since Rod's memories show that Lilia is engaged to him. Instead of fearing for her life, Lilia becomes terrified that Errol will destroy her for lying. Realizing that she lied lied to her father about being engaged, Errol decides to finish her off along with Duagelda. The demon asks if he's really okay with hurting his friend, but Errol replies that he shouldn't have taken someone worthless as a hostage. The awkward exchange leaves the demon speechless, and Lilia finally confesses that she made up the whole engagement story. While Rioner feels bad for Lilia, Errol tells her there's no way Duagelda can hurt her anyway. The demon accepts his challenge and tries to hurt Lilia, but finds himself unable to move Rod's hand. Fighting to get control of his mind, Rod puts the sword down, while Lilia runs to Rioner. Errol points out that even after getting possessed, Rod's body never transformed into a demon, so Duagelda couldn't properly control him. Duagelda asks Rod why he doesn't want his demonic powers, so he explains that in the past, he might have accepted his offer. However, because Errol showed him the results of training, Rod thinks that he can regain his past glory without anyone's help. He throws the demon sword over to Errol, who slices it into countless pieces. With Duagelda completely defeated, the darkness surrounding the arena finally disappears, and Errol realizes that he just slayed an ancient demon. After the Dragon Fang's victory at the tournament, dozens of new swordsmen join the guild. Motivated to start swordsmanship again, Rod trains these young fellows in the guild's training ground. However, he's too strong and humbles them all in an instant. As the trainees run away, Lilia asks one of them why he's escaping. The boy points out that her dad is way too strict as a teacher. She nods in agreement. Lilia smiles, happy that their rotting old guild has finally gotten a new life after Errol led them to victory. At the mention of Errol, the trainee asks her where he went. With an awkward face, she tells him that Errol has already left the guild. Thinking about Errol, she starts crying and recalls that Rioner also left to follow him on his journey. Meanwhile, Errol is riding the same carriage back home that he used to arrive in Brescia. The carriage driver asks him why he's already leaving without enjoying his fame as champion. In response, Errol says there was nothing left to learn in the city since he had already mastered everything. The driver agrees, but remembers that they're heading to the even more boring countryside. As he asks Errol if he's planning to return home, he nods. However, Errol also wants to test his sword skills back home, thinking he can finally beat his mom. The driver laughs, seeing how much he fears his own mom. Back at home, Farah is picking some roses to welcome her son when she realizes he's standing behind her. Errol says that he was hiding his presence, and Farah admits that she only detected him when he got close. When he reveals that he won the Sword God Cup, his mom smiles in praise. Suddenly, she teleports right in front of his face before he can even react. Stunned, Errol realizes that he would have been turned into a shish kebab if his mom were holding a sword instead. Knowing that her son wants to challenge her, Farah tells him to come to the training ground. Once they're in the training ground, both swordsmen raise their swords for the duel, and Farah tells Errol that she's excited to see how strong he has become. Errol tells her to laugh while she can because he's going to defeat her today. In response, she rushes him at lightning speed, but he manages to block her first few strikes. While parrying her attack, Errol notes that it would have defeated him if she hadn't used the same move in the garden earlier. After jumping back from the parry, he unleashes some rapid strikes, but his mom blocks them all. Farah praises Errol for combining the divine air slice and twice slice skills, but he asks her which skill she used to block his attack. She reveals that she just swung her sword the old-fashioned way, which leaves him speechless. Farah tells him that he inspired her to fight without skill, and Errol smiles before attacking again. As they clash hard, the entire village hears their swords clanging. As they think it's a scary monster, Errol jumps into the sky, using even stronger skills to challenge his mom. She uses a binding spell to bring him down, but Errol blocks it. Seeing that he's strong enough to hold his own, Farah decides to unleash her full power. Finally, both of them use the Infinity Break skill, clashing head-on with their strongest move. A little while later, Rioner walks to Errol's house after searching the entire village for him. When she knocks on the door, his little sister, called Mira, comes out. Rioner asks to see Errol, but Mira is too jealous to let a girl see her brother. After telling Rioner that she won't let a cow meet her brother, Mira tries to close the door. As Rioner stops her to negotiate, Farah and Errol return from their duel. Mira happily jumps into her brother's arms, and Rioner notices how similar they look. Mira notices that Errol and Farah are beat up, so he explains they were just dueling. Curious, Mira asks who won, and learns that Errol did in the end. However, Errol thinks he only outlasted his mother because her strength isn't at its prime. As he feels disappointed by the win, Farah jokes that she's still young. Then, she wonders why a pretty young lady is looking for her son and invites Rhaenyra for some tea. Once they're inside, Farah gets straight to the point. She asks Rhaenyra how she fell in love with her son, which makes Rhaenyra completely flustered. While Mira feels jealous, Errol explains that he lived in Brescia with Rhaenyra. This information gives Farah all sorts of unsavory ideas, so Rhaenyra gets embarrassed and explains that they were just guildmates. Then, Errol asks Rhaenyra why she came to his house, so she tells him it was rude to leave the guild so suddenly. He points out that he filled out the official resignation form, but Rhaenyra still thinks he should have said goodbye before leaving. However, Errol doesn't care about relationships since he's only focused on swordsmanship, which leaves her speechless. Meanwhile, Farah feels happy that a girl would travel to their village just for her son. Rhaenyra tells Farah that she also lives in this village, but that isn't the only reason she came. She wants Farah to take her as a disciple. Before they can discuss anything else, Captain Evans rushes to their door. He barges in and explains that something bad has happened in the nearby forest. Many trees have been cut down and the ground is badly damaged. Farah feels guilty because she caused the mess with Errol during their duel. However, Farah calmly tells Evans she just defeated a monster, so he finally calms down. As he thinks about returning and telling the villagers they're safe, he suddenly notices his own daughter. Farah is surprised that Rhaenyra is actually Evans' daughter, while he wonders what she's doing at her house. Farah quickly tells Evans that her daughter wants to train under her to become a good wife. Overwhelmed that his daughter has grown up, Evans starts crying, while Rhaenyra tells Farah she just wanted to train. Farah is confused since she thought the training was for housework, so Rhaenyra tells her she actually meant to learn swordsmanship. Still, Farah carries her momentum and offers to teach her both housework and swordsmanship, and Evans agrees. Rhaenyra is stunned as her father reveals he always wanted his daughter to become a fine lady after his wife passed away. Seeing him push her into marriage, Rhaenyra feels bad that they're ignoring her own dreams. After Evans leaves, Errol visits his father in his office. He asks what kind of magic Leo is researching, and Leo explains that it's a powerful finishing move. Then, Leo puts away his magic and asks Errol why Mira was shouting outside, as he thinks his son finally pulled a baddie. Errol nods. However, Errol tells him he's not here to discuss romance. He tells Leo that he just defeated his mom in a sword fight, and Leo congratulates him. Then, Leo gets serious since he knows what Errol will ask. As expected, Errol asks his dad if he can teach him magic next, but his father refuses, saying it's impossible. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Farah begins training Rhaenyra to be a housewife. With a big cabbage in front of her, Rhaenyra holds a knife like she's about to fight the strongest enemy of her life. Watching her wield the knife like a sword, Farah realizes the young girl isn't cut out for housework. As Rhaenyra brings down the knife, she successfully cuts the cabbage. However, she also cuts the table below it in half, breaking poor Mira's mug in the process. Farah wonders if Rhaenyra never cooked in the guild, so she explains that they had a cook helping them out. Knowing she's got a long road ahead of her, Farah resolves herself to fix Rhaenyra's pathetic housework skills. Feeling embarrassed, Rhaenyra says that she should just focus on swordsmanship, but Farah refuses. She claims that a swordsman can only become strong once they've mastered their mind and body in all aspects. In order to achieve this, Farah tells Rhaenyra to master basic living skills, so she finally agrees. As Farah feels happy that she has another daughter to raise, Rhaenyra wonders where Errol's older sister is. At the mention of their older sister, Mira explains that she left the house after vowing to make the world a better place for classless people. Rhaenyra thinks she's working for a noble cause, but Errol really doesn't need anyone's help. A little while later, after fixing the table Rhaenyra broke, Errol asks his dad to show him some magic. He gets up and fixes Mira's cup with magic before telling Errol to help him store his tools. While they store the tools together, Leo tells Errol to give up on magic once again. He explains the magic requires a special talent called magical energy, which most people lack. Leo thinks that it's unheard of for a classless person to possess any mana. Errol reminds him that he just won a sword tournament without having a class, so he admits that his son can do the impossible. However, Leo tells him that despite his incredible dedication, he can't master magic with hard work alone. He explains that a lack of mana is like missing the limbs to use magic. Errol nods in understanding, but thinks that he does have some magical energy. Leo shakes his head, saying that if he had mana, he would have received the magician class. Despite that, Errol is confident that he has has magic. He explains that he discovered the energy when Ryuner used to beat him up at Dragon Fang. Leo gets concerned that his son is a victim of domestic violence, but Errol reassures him that it was consensual. While Leo gets even more worried, Errol reveals that during his training to get his guts skill, he used to consume tons of holy water for recovery. Lilia got tired of him emptying the guild's budget, so she got magic potions instead. Ryuner wondered if the potions were expired, but Lilia thought they could have been old bottles of holy water too. Errol drank the bottles anyway, thinking that expired medicine would be good training for his internal organs. However, he explains that after drinking the potions, he felt some energy returning to his body. Errol says that the energy was different from the protection blessing, so it could have been magical energy instead. Hearing this, Leo finally feels hopeful that his son can learn magic. He admits he was a bit jealous that his wife was the only one who got to train Errol, but now that he can teach magic to him, he feels happy. Ready to begin training, he asks Errol if he can feel the mana in his body. Errol nods, so Leo asks him if he can move it around. As Errol concentrates, Leo tells him to focus the mana on his palms. After a while of intense focus, Errol brings out a bright glow of energy on his palms. Seeing the successful attempt, Leo is overjoyed, but Errol wonders what he just did. As Leo tells him that he just used mana for the first time ever, Errol falls back in exhaustion. Errol feels disappointed that his energy is so weak, and Leo confirms that he's not even at the level of a child sorcerer yet. However, he tells Errol that he can increase his mana by practicing over and over. Errol feels relieved that he can finally train since he's good at working hard, but he soon passes out from exhaustion. Looking at his son, Leo feels glad that Errol didn't give up despite his warnings. While shedding tears, he feels proud of his son, who has shown him that the impossible is possible. After waking up, Errol heads to a store to buy mana potions. The store lady wonders why he's buying her entire stock, thinking that the potions are for Leo. However, Errol tells her that he's using the potions for himself. Once he has the potions, he starts chugging them like sodas while training every day. After 6 months of training, Errol finally gathers enough magic energy to cast the weakest spells. Leo praises him for his success, but explains that he can't use magic yet. He gives Errol a piece of paper containing weird symbols, which leaves him confused. Leo reveals that the paper is called Magiscript, and that besides having mana, magicians must also learn the magical language to cast spells. Then Leo tells Errol that after he learns a magic skill, the required spell chant will automatically appear in his mind. Errol thinks it's troublesome to create the whole spell upon every cast, and Leo agrees. To help him get started on his magic journey, he suggests studying at the City of Magic school. Seeing Errol's interest in learning, Leo offers to train him for the school's entrance exam. Later, at lunch, Mira praises her mom's delicious cooking. Ryuner accepts the compliment, but Mira soon realizes that it was actually her cooking. Jealous, Mira backtracks on her compliment, while Errol also praises the food. Farah thinks that Ryuner has grown a lot in both cooking and swordsmanship, and Errol notices how much she likes her. Leo also chimes in, saying that Ryuner is a beautiful and hardworking girl. However, this makes Farah angry, so he explains he didn't mean it that way. To cheer up his wife, Leo makes a beautiful heart shape just for her, which explodes into lively firebirds. Watching the glowing birds dance around, Errol feels even more excited to step into the world of magic. After 3 years of intense housewife training, Ryuner nervously presents Farah with a cup of tea. As she watches, Farah brings the cup to her mouth before praising her cooking. Relieved, Ryuner thanks Farah for all her guidance these years, but suddenly, they hear Mira sobbing loudly. As she comes into the kitchen, crying, Mira reveals that Errol left the house with a letter in his bed. Ryuner takes the letter and finds out that Errol left for the City of Magic with no other explanation. While Mira cries because her brother left to get milk, Ryuner feels guilty since she has once done the same thing. Suddenly, Farah hugs her, warning her not to leave them like her cold son. Ryuner reassures her she won't dip, and Farah wonders why her children turned out like this. Soon, the culprit comes into the room, lazily rubbing his eyes. Farah sighs, thinking it'll all be fine as long as her kids stay safe. Meanwhile, Errol is in a carriage, riding to the City of Magic. He asks the driver how long it will take, and learns that they've got 3 more days to go. The driver asks Errol why he's always jumping from one big city to another, and the passengers get interested in him as well. The kids ask if Errol is headed to the School of Magic just like them, so Errol nods. A boy named Kaido wonders why Errol is applying at such an old age, and his friend Kufa assumes he's just trying the entrance exam again after failing it many times. She tells Kaido not to make Errol feel bad, but Kaido tells her that she just roasted him for failing anyway. While the two of them start arguing, the other girl, Colette, tries to calm them down. In their rage, they ignore her completely, and Errol notes that all three of them are wizards. Seeing their young age, he realizes that the kids must have just received their wizard class. Then, Kaido tells Errol that he uses red magic, then curiously asks what type of magic Errol uses. Thinking about his skill, Errol remembers learning from his father that magic is divided into colors based on the elements a wizard uses. However, because Errol didn't receive a magic class for any specific color, Leo told him to try using all of the magic elements. Recalling his experience, Errol tells the kids he's a jack of all trades since he's classless. Kufa laughs, since she thinks there's no way a classless can attend a magic school. Angered by his prank, Kaido tells Errol to stop lying, but he tells him it's the truth. Finally, Errol shows them his class card, which proves that he's classless. Seeing this, Kaido starts mocking Errol for trying to learn magic without a class. Errol sighs, having heard such taunts a billion times already. Suddenly, a creature roars loudly from the forest, startling the carriage horses. The kids get worried about the noise, so Errol explains that it's the sound of a troll king. Terrified of the powerful beast, Kaido tells the rider to rush them out of the forest, but he tells him that the horses are too scared to move. Colette thinks that they're all going to die, but Kufa reminds her that trolls are just slow creatures. Kaido agrees, thinking that they can avoid its attacks to fight back. With her friend's encouragement, Colette nods and agrees to fight. Although the kids are ready to fight, they still gulp nervously as the troll king approaches. The hideous monster shows its face, and Colette quickly clings to Kufa. Kaido reminds her to be brave, saying that it's not too big to handle. However, as the troll gets closer, suddenly, a massive club knocks it into space. As the kids watch in horror, the real troll king finally walks out, 10 times larger than the previous one. Finally, all of the young magicians give up any hope of survival. The girls wonder if they can try doing anything with magic, but Kaido quietly steps out of the carriage, trembling with fear. He pulls out his wand, determined to fight to the death. After channeling all of his mana into the wand, Kaido unleashes a powerful fireball at the Troll King. As the blast explodes in the monster's face, the girls think it actually worked. However, it only roars in anger, ready to destroy the pesky kids. The girls realize that Kaido only made the troll even angrier, and he screams that he has already used up all his mana. The Troll King approaches the carriage to attack, but suddenly, a giant explosion spell vaporizes the monster. The kids wonder who defeated it. Meanwhile, Errol pops out of the carriage, thinking that he went overboard with his mana. Kaido wonders if he was the one who cast the spell, and Kufa points out that explosion is a supreme level red magic. Shocked, Kaido also recalls that only an advanced archmage can use an explosion. Then, Errol walks over to the horses and uses his healing magic. The horses stand back up, and the carriage driver thanks him. Errol asks the driver to show his own skills next time, but he thinks it's too big a hassle. Nearby, Kaido apologizes to Errol for his earlier rudeness, thinking he's a senior magic teacher, and says that from now on he'll be his student. Errol tries telling him he's just a classless mage, but the kids think he's hiding his true identity from them. Seeing them glaze him so hard, Errol thinks he should have just used a sword to avoid suspicion. After everyone calms down, the carriage moves out again. 3 days later, they arrive at a floating island city, pointing towards it. Kaido tells Errol that it's the city of magic, Ulzbel. Surprised by the architecture, Errol gets off the carriage with the kids. Kaido excitedly explains that the bridge connecting the island to the forest is also held up through magic. Watching their friend follow Errol like a dog, Kufa wonders why Kaido adores him so much. She thinks that he might have used hypnosis magic to control Kaido. Hearing their doubts, Errol feels annoyed that he causes suspicions everywhere he goes. As they enter the city, Kaido asks Errol if he'll apply for the red magic school with him. This surprises Errol, so Kaido explains that all schools are divided based on the color of their magic. Since every element has a different magical language for its spell chants, all the schools have different teachers and syllabi. Kufa reveals that she'll go to the blue school, while Colette feels nervous about applying to the green school. Realizing that he needs to take an entrance exam, Errol prays that he doesn't get rejected just like he did back in the City of Swords. After parting ways with the girls, Errol and Kaido head over to the Red School of Magic. As Errol hands over his entrance entrance application, the receptionist asks if he entered all his information accurately. He wonders if she's asking him to check his class, thinking that she'll reject him because he's classless. However, she easily approves his application, which surprises Errol. He asks why the school doesn't reject classless people, so the receptionist tells him they give a fair chance to everyone. With their application approved, Errol walks to the examination area with Kaido. After a young man casts a fireball spell, the examiner calls another applicant. He walks up and proudly reveals he's already an advanced mage, shocking everyone with his talent. Errol wonders if an advanced class is that big of a deal, so Kaido tells him they're basically guaranteed to have a successful career. Errol nods, recalling that his father just ended up in the countryside with his exceptional talent. Kaido thinks that the boy is too arrogant, but Errol reminds him that he isn't any better. Soon, the boy burns the test dummy with an impressive eruption spell, leaving the audience stunned. Seeing everyone fawn over him, Kaido starts bragging about his master, which annoys the boy. Errol shuts Kaido's big mouth, making the boy think Errol is afraid of him. While the boy boasts about melting the metal dummy, Errol tells him to look at it again. As he turns around, he finds the dummy intact, much to his shock. The examiner explains that it's made out of powerful mithril, so ordinary attacks can't melt it. Once again, Kaido starts taunting the young mage for his overconfidence, but Errol shuts him up before leaving to attempt his own test. Standing in front of the durable mithril dummy, Errol thinks it's a good chance to go all out and test his abilities. As he charges his spell, the examiner gets surprised. Finally, Errol casts the eruption spell, which just looks like a thin needle pouring on the dummy. Seeing the spell's weak power, the boy starts laughing at Kaido for his boasting. However, the dummy suddenly melts into a puddle, stunning the young man. Since the eruption spell isn't strong enough to melt mithril, the boy accuses Errol of cheating. Errol explains that he condensed the flame into a smaller area to boost the intensity of its heat, which allowed him to melt the mithril. The boy can't believe that Errol is able to modify his magic. Errol starts walking away, and Kaido wonders where he's heading. Errol tells him that he plans to take the entrance exams at the other magic schools too. He soon arrives at the water school, where Kyufa has just passed her test. She's surprised to see him there, so he tells her he'll attempt the exam just like her. Soon, it's Errol's turn to start, and he creates some tough icicle spikes that shatter the mithril dummy to bits. After destroying all of the applicants' hopes and dreams, he turns around to target the green school. There, Errol finds Colette nervously huddled in the corner and asks why she isn't taking her exam. She tells him she's too nervous to even register, saying that she needs moral support to try anything. Errol tells her she needs to take the exam on her own, so she asks how he handles his nerves when he's anxious. Confused, he replies that he has never felt nervous in his life, which leaves Colette shocked. Errol asks her why a person can feel nervous, so she tells him that it comes from the fear of failure. After thinking about her words, Errol asks Colette if she has never failed before. She nods, saying that she fails a lot, which is why she wants to avoid it. Saying that he has also failed many times, Errol wonders why she's scared of it. Colette doesn't understand his words, so he reminds her that even if a person fails sometimes, their life doesn't just end. His simple words stun Colette, and she finally believes that even if she fails, she can just try again later. After calming down, she thanks Errol for his help. He smiles and asks her how the green school's exam works. Colette explains that in order to pass, applicants must make a windmill spin with their magic. With this in mind, Errol registers with her and enters the examination area. There, he focuses his mind and unleashes a tornado spell at a windmill. As the rough winds shred the poor windmill to pieces, Errol realizes it wasn't made out of mithril. The examiner tells Errol he has passed and asks Colette to begin her test. She feels even more nervous taking the exam after Errol's insane show of skill, but he reminds her to calm down. Finally, Colette prepares to take her own test and passes it. While Errol leaves the venue, he heads over to the rest of the magic schools, passing all the exams with flying colors. In the end, Errol heads over to the Black School of Magic, surprised by its ruined building. While walking down the halls, he notices a strange creature in a box. Suddenly, a woman comes over to him, asking if he has seen her pet, Gooey. Errol points to the box, so she quickly takes a strange creature out of it. Happy to have her pet, she proudly brags to Errol that it's a chimera she made inside her lab. Suddenly, a skeleton welcomes Errol to her school, but he slashes off her head by instinct. Errol wonders if she's an undead monster, but the skeleton introduces herself as a normal person called Latalia. Errol wonders how she's walking around as a skeleton and asks how he can take the Black School's exam. Latalia explains that since nobody wants to learn black magic, they don't even take an exam. Although Errol is weirded out by their casual attitude, he decides to join anyway. Afterward, he heads back to the city where Kaido and the girls call out to him. The kids rush to ask which school he'll attend, then immediately start arguing over who gets to claim him. Errol sighs and reveals that he plans to attend all of the schools at the same time. Kaido thinks attending 3 schools at once is already impossible, but Errol then reveals that he'll actually be attending all 6 magic schools in the city. As he counts down from red and blue to white, yellow, and black, the kids feel their world shattered by Errol's insane ambitions. Since the kids don't believe him, Errol shows them all the ID cards he received from the 6 schools. They finally believe him, but wonder why the schools are letting him attend multiple institutions. Errol thinks it's because they keep the information on their students private, so other schools can't tell if they're enrolled anywhere else. However, Errol still faces a major problem. His class timings in the different schools all overlap with each other. Luckily, class attendance only counts for 20% of his grades, so he can just make it up by acing the exams. Colette says that this will still be difficult because the textbooks don't contain all the latest information taught in classes. Errol nods and asks the kids if they're willing to share notes from their classes with him. Since they all agree, it only leaves 3 classes for Errol to attend himself. Also, the Black Institute doesn't have any formal schedule, so that leaves Errol with just the white and yellow schools of magic. Hearing this, the 2 girls leave to have a secret talk. While Kaido asks Errol to take the first class at Red School with him, the girls think it's already insane to keep up with 2 prestigious schools at once, but Errol seems too chill about it. Once they've all finished their discussions, Kaido tells everyone it's time to take their first class. A little while later, Errol and Kaido enter their class, where they walk towards the back. As they enter, the advanced mage named Royce quickly notices them, and Kaido starts taunting him for losing to Errol. After Royce tells Kaido he doesn't have the right to brag, he accuses Errol of being a mere spellcaster. However, Errol tells him he's not a spellcaster, so the boy thinks he might be a mage. When Errol responds that he's not a mage either, he gets scared, thinking he might be an advanced archmage. In the end, Errol tells him he's not an archmage either, so the poor boy is left confused about his class. Soon, their teacher comes in for the class, so Royce asks him about Errol's class. The teacher opens his book and tells Royce that Errol is classless, which leaves him flabbergasted. Finally, Errol and Kaido sit down at their seats, and the teacher begins their class. As the teacher starts writing complex manuscripts on the board, Kaido feels his brain melting under the pressure. Meanwhile, Errol is surprised that he's teaching basic magic language, since most spellcasters can naturally use the manuscripts from their skills. Soon, the teacher explains that although the kids don't need to know the manuscript to cast spells, it will help them greatly for more advanced spells. He also reveals that by mastering the magical language, a mage can increase the power of their spells and reduce the mana drain and strain on their body. This information surprises Errol, and then the teacher also reveals that an advanced mage can unlock new effects by rearranging the contents of their spells. As Kaido learns this, he realizes that Errol was effortlessly pulling off this powerful technique without formal training. Errol is also surprised, since he has always seen his dad play with magic spells like Legos and copied him. The next day, Errol visits the Green School, feeling bored since he didn't learn anything new from all 3 schools. He does feel excited to learn flight magic there, since he has never used it before. Since Errol can use much more advanced magic already, Colette is surprised that basic flight is new to him. He explains that back at home, his dad was too scared of heights, so he never let him fly there. Soon, the wind teacher calls her students to get ready. She tells them all to imagine going up a strong wind draft and then imagine themselves being a bird. Errol notes that this visualization method only works for students who have the wind class, so he can't use it by just imagining it. As he wonders what to do, Colette successfully lifts herself into the air. He feels impressed by this, but she soon loses control and falls back to the ground. While everyone else laughs at her, Colette feels determined to keep trying until she masters the skill. Watching her float on her first day, Errol thinks she can easily master it with some practice. Then, he tries to fly with a tornado spell, but it just catapults him into the sky. After landing on the ground like a fallen meteorite, Errol thinks his method was too extreme. While Colette helps him stand back up, up. Another student approaches them, laughing at how bad they are. He starts showing off his flying skill and brags that he's good enough to win a race. Since Errol doesn't know what a race is, Colette tells him that wind users usually race through difficult tracks to see which one has the best movement. Feeling interested, Errol thinks he'll join a race too, but the boy reminds him he can't compete without the flying skill. Errol tells him he can learn the skill with enough practice, so the boy asks their teacher when the next race will be held. When she tells him it'll take place in 2 months, the boy tells Errol he'll need at least 6 months of practice before he can fly well enough to race. He thinks Errol should race the next year, but Errol feels confident that he can combine his wind skills just in time for this one. Hearing his confident words, Colette believes he can truly pull it off. A few days later, Kaido visits the green school with the 2 girls since Colette lost an item there. He wonders why the girls needed his help so late, so Kyufa tells him she's scared of creepy rumors. Terrified, Kaido immediately covers his ears, and Kyufa starts taunting him for being such a scaredy cat. He reminds her that she's literally hiding behind Colette, so she starts making a bunch of weak excuses. As the 2 of them start bickering, Colette tells them to keep it down since it's midnight. Suddenly, the 2 kids notice a ghost behind her, and they start screaming in terror. As the ghost enters the building through the window, it immediately covers Colette's mouth to stop her from screaming. Kaido threatens the ghost to let his friend go. As he tries to cast a spell, the ghost raises his hands in surrender and removes his hood, revealing that it's actually Errol. He asks the kids what they're doing so late at night, so they also ask him why he's creeping around like a ghost. Errol points to his feet hovering over the ground, explaining that he's been practicing his flying skills every night. Kyufa feels relieved that the ghost isn't real, while Kaido gets worried for Errol's health. Errol reassures Kaido that he's doing fine, since he's currently sleeping as well. The kids are shocked that he can sleep while using the spell, but Errol confirms he does it to save time. He tells the kids this method is great for recovery, but Kyufa thinks there's no way sleeping like this could help his body. Since he stubbornly claims that it works fine, Kyufa gives up and feels amazed that he can pull it off. Meanwhile, Kaido realizes how much he's been slacking on his training. He tells Errol that although he can't ever reach his level, he'll start training much harder to master his own techniques. Errol reminds him to get rid of his fear of ghosts first, while the girls also feel inspired to work harder. After getting Colette's lost item, the kids return home. While Errol wonders what to do next, he enters the black school, where Latalia perks up to see him. Errol tells her he just wants to use the library, so she gets disappointed. Then, she gives him a library card, and Errol explains that he wants to read all the unique books from the black school since they're not found anywhere else. Seeing his enthusiasm to read black magic books, Latalia tries recruiting Errol into her office since no one else wants to work there. However, he refuses her kindness and sticks to just taking the books home. The next day, while Errol is in class at the red school, he raises his hand to ask a question. When the teacher turns around, Errol points out that he misspelled a line, which surprises him. After looking at the board, the teacher realizes Errol was right, so he starts correcting it. Kaido is impressed that Errol can point out a teacher's mistake, so he explains that he had to memorize every single spell he uses because he can't automatically summon them with a skill. Kaido feels creeped out that Errol can remember all those complicated spells, so he reveals that he shortens the longer ones to make room for more. As the teacher hears about Errol's shortened spells, he asks him to overwrite the spell on the board with his shortened version. He agrees and walks up to the board and writes his shortened version. Seeing that Errol removed 2 full lines from the spell, the teacher acknowledges his talent. However, he points out that Errol's version cuts out all the safety features, so the shortened spell could blow up if it fails. While Kaido feels his head spinning from all the complex ideas, Errol tells the teacher that divine protection is enough to handle any explosion if the spells fail. The teacher wonders how he can withstand the pain from a literal explosion, but Errol says he can endure it as long as he doesn't die. Hearing his confident response, the teacher thinks for a bit. Then, he asks Errol if he wants to take an exam for a direct promotion to the 2nd grade since he already knows so much. While Errol feels intrigued, Royce also gets up and asks to take the promotion exam. Afterward, the teacher takes them to an enclosed space with a metal gate at the end. The teacher tells the 2 boys that as soon as the gate opens, they'll face a monster to defeat for the test. While Errol thinks it'll be easy to pass, the teacher warns him not to let the monster get too close. Then, he asks the boys which of them wants to go first, so Royce steps up. Once Royce gets ready, the teacher opens the gate. Soon, a large minotaur comes out of the gate, making Royce nervous. As the monster charges towards him, Royce quickly casts his eruption spell on it. Unfortunately, the monster avoids his attack due to its fast speed and keeps on charging towards him. Meanwhile, Errol feels impressed since Royce has greatly increased his spell's power. However, due to his bad accuracy, he is unable to hit the minotaur with the stationary firewall. Soon, the minotaur gets right in front of Royce. As the giant monster raises his paw to attack, Royce flinches in fear, but it suddenly disappears into the air. Nearby, the teacher laughs, saying there's no way their school would endanger a student's life. Errol notices how much fun the teacher is having, while Royce feels bad about his terrible performance. The teacher reminds him that he is normally supposed to take the exam after 2 years of class, so this result was already very good for him. However, Royce tears up from the blow to his pride, thinking that Errol is already stronger than what he'll become in 2 years. Then, he realizes that the teacher allowed him to take the exam to see his own limits. Finally, Royce accepts that he's weak and promises his teacher to train his best from now on. The teacher nods and tells Errol to get ready for his test. He climbs down to the arena, and the teacher informs him that he'll face the same monster. After Errol gets ready, the teacher opens the gate and another minotaur comes out. However, Errol notices that it looks different from before, and even the teacher gets confused. Soon, another instructor comes rushing in, saying that she thought he was holding an exam, as she reveals that she released a higher level minotaur for Errol. The teacher gets shocked. Down in the arena, the powerful minotaur charges right for Errol. He calmly prepares 2 blazing fire spears, leaving the teachers stunned. Instructor Bacchus notes that although the smaller spears are weaker than eruption, it's much easier to hit a moving target with them. Errol launches the spears at the minotaur, but it surprisingly jumps over them. The teacher realizes it's only normal for a high-level minotaur to be so intelligent, and wonders if it can break out of his teleportation trap. Thinking that Errol is in danger, he offers to help him, but Errol tells him he's fine. Instructor Bacchus reminds him that frontal attacks won't work on the minotaur, so Errol tries a new strategy. He controls his spears to attack the minotaur from behind, and they easily dig into the monster's back. As the minotaur is defeated, the instructor asks Errol if he added a homing effect to his spears. He nods, saying that he modified the spell to include homing. Then, Errol incinerates the defeated minotaur with eruption, burning it to ashes. The teacher feels amazed that Errol is on par with their school's top student. He thinks there's no way a classless person can be so strong, and thinks that Errol's class wasn't detected properly. As Errol comes back up from the arena, he asks the teacher if he passed. Smiling, Instructor Bacchus says that the result is clear and tells him to start attending the second-level classes. Later, Kaido learns about Errol's promotion and starts bragging about it to the girls. However, Errol doesn't seem too happy, since he was only able to take the promotion exam at his teacher's recommendation, as he says that the other schools might not give him this chance. The girls realize Errol wants to get promoted in their schools as well. In reality, Errol actually plans to get promoted in all 6 schools, which leaves them completely speechless. Back at home, as Rioner tries to cook on her own, she gets scared by the hot utensils. Farah tells her she can take a break, but Rioner decides to push through. After carefully bringing a fish above the hot oil, she drops it safely, but still gets startled by the splash. Meanwhile, Mira tells Rioner to hurry it up, but Farah tells her to wait patiently. She teaches the young girl that all good things take time, just like how Errol became strong after countless hours of hard training. However, Mira thinks that Rioner can't compare to Errol, and she agrees. Rioner knows that he went through much harder training than she ever did, and wonders what he's doing right now. In the Blue Magic Academy, Errol asks his teacher, Hengel, to take a promotion exam. She tells him to wait until the year's end, but Errol asks her if she can recommend him in an exceptional case. Hengel reminds him that only special students can get exceptions, so he offers to show her his water magic. She sighs and offers to promote him if she performs well in his classes. However, Errol tells her he doesn't want to take the pointless classes in the first place, which angers her. As Hengel feels insulted by Errol's comment, he clarifies that her classes aren't actually pointless, but they're too low level for someone with his skill. His arrogant comments enrage Hengel even more, and she finally tells him to back up his talk and display his true skills. To begin his exam, she takes him to a secluded yard for sparring. Watching Errol confront his own teacher, Kufa wonders if he can defeat a person close to being an archmage. After Errol gets done with his warm-up, Hengel tells him they're not allowed to use physical attacks in the duel. He agrees to the rules and takes a few steps back, but she reminds him that he could get hurt in the fight. Seeing him accept the rules so easily, Hengel wonders if he truly thinks he can beat her. Errol tells her that while he can't be 100% sure, he thinks he's got a good chance against her. His confidence enrages Hengel, so she begins the duel with a powerful ice tornado spell. As the harsh winds freeze Errol into an ice block, Kufa gets worried for him. Hengel thinks she has already won, so she tells Kufa to learn from the match she has just witnessed. Suddenly, Errol breaks the ice from inside, revealing the ice barrier skill he used to protect himself. Hengel is finally surprised by his strength, so he summons a dozen ice spikes to attack her. She calms down, thinking it's only a basic skill, but Errol suddenly creates another batch of icicles. Soon, he shoots his icicles to attack Hengel, but she creates her own ice edges to defend against them. Seeing her defend his attack, Errol thinks Hengel is truly qualified to be a teacher. Meanwhile, Hengel recalls that Errol also used the same attack in his entrance exam, so she thinks it's his specialty skill. She tells Errol that ice spells are her specialty too, so he challenges her to an ice edge duel. After Errol creates even more icicles than before, Hengel easily matches his attack. But this time, Errol also forms 100 icicles to her left, right, and directly behind her, trapping her inside a circle of ice. Since changing an icicle's direction requires an incredibly complex spell modification, Hengel realizes she's completely outmatched, giving her no time to react. Errol launches all the ice edges towards her, so she blocks them with a barrier. As she blocks all of the attack, Hengel is surprised that Errol's strikes aren't losing any power despite using so much mana. However, she notes that the ice edges are only freezing around her barrier, which is increasing its strength even more. She thinks that once Errol runs out of mana, it'll be her turn to attack. However, Errol tells her he's about to finish the match, which shocks her. She reminds him that not a single one of his icicles pierced her shield, so Errol tells her he didn't want that either. Then, he launches a glacial lance from above, making Hengel wonder how he has so much mana left. As the lance shoots towards her, Hengel tries to block it with another ice shield, but the lance's sharp edge pierces through the shield and defeats her. After he wins the duel, he leaves the school and meets up with the kids. They learn that Hengel directly promoted him to the class without any other examination since he defeated her. Since his goal is to master all the different types of magic, Errol moves on to getting promoted in the Green School. As he talks to his wind teacher with Colette, she tells him that the Green School doesn't make exceptions like other schools. Hearing her teacher's firm refusal, Colette tries to drag Errol away. Then, the teacher looks into the school's policy book and finds out that the headmaster can directly promote students if they want to. Errol thinks he's got a chance, but she tells him there's no way she'll let him bother the headmaster for his personal request. The teacher warns Errol that he'll be expelled for disturbing the headmaster, so he finally calms down. It's the last thing he wants. Colette wonders why Errol is in such a hurry to get promoted, so he tells her he's trying to catch up to a person he admires. Then, he asks his teacher if he can directly show his skills to prove his strength, but she keeps refusing him. Finally, Colette thinks of another way Errol can prove himself. She recalls that after the school's flying race event, the headmaster personally presents the prize to the first place winner. Errol thinks it's a great chance to directly meet the headmaster, but his teacher reminds him that the race is a fierce competition with over 300 participants. Since Errol is confident he can win, he soon goes out with the kids to participate in the race. While the kids cheer for Errol, the arrogant wind user from earlier, named Skake, walks up to him. Since Errol doesn't remember who he is, the boy's precious ego gets hurt. He introduces himself to Errol and claims he'll become the best wind user ever, but Errol tells him he's going to win the race. Skake remembers that Errol couldn't even fly 2 months ago, so the boy wonders how he plans to win the full race. Errol tells him he has practiced a lot since then, but Skake thinks there is no way he could improve himself so much in such a short amount of time. Soon, the event announcer, Grid, starts the event. He explains that the race will start from their school, looping around the entire Magic City before returning. Then, he points to the headmaster, who is attending as a special guest, and tells the audience to cheer for him. As the headmaster tells everyone to stay safe, Grid then introduces the commentator, Instructor Dummel. The appearance of the handsome instructor sends all the girls into an uproar, so Kaito gets jealous that he's getting all the attention. With all the preparations complete, gate, the participants get in line to begin the race. Soon, Grid starts the race, and all the mages fly up. Unfortunately, many inexperienced mages collide with each other from the very start, leaving the skilled mages to actually compete in the race. As Grid comments on the match, suddenly, a student loses control of his magic and crashes into the audience. While the kid lies in a mess of his own bones, Dummel points out that he made the same mistake last year. Meanwhile, a girl named Dione is leading the race within the top 15, and Dummel notices a few new competitors among them. As he looks at Skake and Errol, Skake wonders how Errol is keeping up with the fast speed. Errol tells him that the top competitors are actually going slow right now since they need to preserve stamina for the rest of the long race. Skake is shocked that Errol considers this high speed so slow and tries to cover it up. In that moment, Errol notices a sharp turn coming up from the school gate's narrow path and focuses on perfectly executing it. As Grid reaches the gate, he riles the audience to watch if the top competitors can make it through the turn. The first two of them are unable to turn around in time, so they go straight into the city's lake. Behind them, Skake makes sure to turn perfectly, and he makes it out after an intense effort. Skake thinks he has finally left Errol behind, but he easily comes behind him at a relaxed pace. Soon, Grid follows the students as they fly around the city, noticing that the race is already halfway done. Seeing Dione leading the competition, Dummel thinks she'll win since she has won the last 3 races as well. However, Skake and Errol keep pace with her, so Grid thinks they could see an exciting upset. Meanwhile, Dione is surprised that first grade students are keeping up with her speed, so she decides to get serious, so she increases her speed and pulls even farther ahead, so Skake tries his best to catch up as well. Unfortunately, he soon realizes that his body has run out of mana, so he admits defeat. Although Skake falls behind, Dummel praises him for his exceptional performance as a first-year student. Then, Grid focuses his attention on Errol, who is still flying next to Dione. Seeing that he's keeping up, Dione speeds up even more. Errol knows that he can't go any faster than his current speed, so he decides to use a secret skill to boost it. With bursts of air under his boots, he catches up to Dione with the extra speed. Even Grid gets surprised by Errol's performance, so Dummel explains that Errol is condensing thick masses of air around his feet and kicking them off to propel himself forward. Grid is surprised, since he didn't think such a spell was even possible, while Dummel points out that air bursts only give a small boost in speed, but Errol has sped up dramatically with his kicks, so Grid wonders how he's doing it. To explain Errol's incredible speed, Dummel assumes his legs must be unbelievably strong, since only Supreme Class swordsmen can pull something like that off. Hearing Dummel's commentary, Errol feels impressed that he figured it out. In reality, he is using Soar, which is a swordsman's movement skill. As the final participants race towards the end, Grid wonders which of them is going to win. However, Dummel thinks things won't be so simple, since they have to make another sharp turn to enter the school gate. At the students' current speed, such an abrupt turn would be almost impossible to pull off for them. Dione also notes that she has to slow down for the turn and waits for Errol to slow down so she can gain some distance over him. However, he refuses to slow down even as they reach the gate, so Dione is forced to protect herself and remain behind. Grid praises Errol for taking the lead, but he thinks there's no way he can make the turn. Somehow, Errol proves him wrong by punching the air in front of him to knock his body back and reduce his speed. With the assistance of his punches, he easily goes through the gate and crosses the finish line, winning the very first race he's ever entered. After Errol wins, Dione congratulates him on the victory. While Dione feels determined to try again next year, Skake slowly pulls up behind them to finish in third. Afterward, the headmaster congratulates Errol and presents him with a certificate and medal for his victory. After accepting the awards, Errol asks the headmaster to promote him, since he just proved his incredible abilities. The headmaster agrees to promote him to 2nd grade and asks where he learned his amazing magic. Errol tells him he just learned it from the school, but he doesn't believe he learned such an advanced flight magic from their basic class. Then, the headmaster leaves after wishing him good luck. Errol feels happy that he has gotten his promotions in the red, blue, and green schools, and looks forward to tackling the remaining 3 next. A few days later, Errol visits the yellow school, where he asks a teacher if he can get promoted to the next class. She explains that in order to get a quicker promotion, he needed to prove his abilities by making a useful item for their school's showcase. However, since Errol forgot to register, he needs to wait a few months for the next showcase because the slots are full. Feeling impatient, Errol begs her to somehow make an exception for him, but she refuses. Helpless, he tries to tell the teacher he created a new type of golem, but she still refuses to break the rules for him. However, another instructor, called Rogwell, gets interested in Errol's golem. He tells Errol that if he can truly show him a special golem, he'll accept him as his research assistant and get him a special spot on the showcase. Errol thinks the offer is too good to be true, but he accepts it. Behind him, the teacher thinks he has made a mistake, which confuses Errol. She explains that although Rogwell will allow him to take part in the showcase, his requirements are extremely high since he's a golem fanatic. Errol wonders what's wrong with that, so she reveals that Rogwell creates combat golems and uses them to crush weaker students in his showcases. Surprised, he realizes that Rogwell just wants to use him as his living test dummy. The teacher offers to help Errol bail out on Rogwell's offer, but he doesn't mind since he's confident in his own combat abilities. A few days later, the showcase begins, where all the teachers lay out their creations. Soon, Rockwell steps into the arena and announces that he's about to show off his golems. As soon as he appears, the spectators start whispering that Rogwell is going to bully yet another victim. Rogwell summons his earth golems and tells Errol to bring out his own. He nods and summons his golem, Alpha. As Alpha walks out, Rogwell is surprised to see it made out of pure metal. Watching the special golem, the kids feel impressed by Errol's creativity, while Rogwell thinks the metal golem is too heavy to move freely with earth magic. Thinking that there's someone inside the suit of armor, he removes its head, but finds it completely empty inside. After holding the head, Rogwell realizes that Errol made his golem out of a lightweight custom alloy. Believing the light metal made Errol's golem weak, Rogwell orders his earth golems to attack. As one of his golems charges, Alpha takes on a fighting stance. When the golem throws a punch at Alpha, it stops it in its tracks, and the force of the block shatters the golem's arm. Seeing his strongest weapon get absolutely demolished, Rogwell finally stops underestimating Errol's creation. Once his golem regrows its broken arm, he commands the others to harden their bodies. With the increased power and multiple attacks, Rogwell thinks there's no way Alpha can defend all the incoming attacks with just 2 arms. However, Errol simply summons some swords for Alpha, so it confidently takes a sword stance. Rogwell thinks it's actually a bad move and sends in his golems for the kill. Somehow, Alpha shatters all of his charging golems with just 1 sword slash, which leaves him completely stunned. Errol thinks it was just a simple slash, but Rogwell tells him an advanced sword technique like that should be completely impossible for a golem. Errol explains that even if normal golems can't use swords, he created Alpha with a special lightweight metal and flexible joints, which reduce its mana consumption and increase its mobility. As Errol finishes his explanation, Rogwell understands the logic behind his work, but he still can't believe he actually pulled it off. Errol asks whether his research is enough to qualify for the promotional exam, but Rogwell explains that assistants aren't allowed to take it. However, he says he can get the headmaster to promote him if Errol joins his golem laboratory, so he accepts without hesitation. After getting the promotion at the Yellow School, Errol heads over to the White Institute for another promotional exam. There, he greets Instructor Keed. Noticing her closed eyes, Errol asks if she's doing okay. Keed explains that she's fine since she's naturally blind, but can sense the magical energy within objects and other people. However, when she actually peeks into his body, she finds a billion different bottomless magic energies inside. Overwhelmed by all the magic, Keed wonders if Errol is okay, so he reassures her he's fine. Finally, she decides to ignore the mysterious energies within his body and takes him to the trial slate. As they enter a dark cave, Keed explains that many skeletons of fallen warriors used to reside there, but their bones became animated after the cave received a large concentration of mana. To begin exploring, Errol uses a light spell, so Keed warns him that the undead are attracted to it. Before long, undead skeletons rush at Errol, but he instantly deletes them with a holy ray and continues on his way down. In the end, Keed has to quickly catch up to Errol. He asks if the exam continues deeper in the cave, but she explains that he's already passed because the requirement was simply to defeat some of the undead. Although Keed feels worried that Errol will run out of mana on the way back, he reassures her that he hasn't even used 1% of it. Suddenly, a powerful undead attacks them from behind, so Errol pushes it back with another Holy Ray spell. While Keed feels wary of this powerful skeleton, the undead starts introducing himself to them. Unfortunately, Errol keeps blasting it with more Holy Rays, preventing it from saying its own name. As the poor undead tries to catch its breath, Errol uses a more powerful Holy Cross spell, which completely incinerates it to ashes. Feeling the skill's incredible power, Keed tells Errol that he just defeated a wight, which is a high-ranked undead variant. She also feels amazed that he can use Holy Cross, since it's a technique only advanced exorcists can use. However, Errol only thinks that the skill is a tiny bit stronger than Holy Light, which leaves her speechless. Later, Errol heads to the Black School. As he studies some books, Latalia suddenly sneaks up on him, and he reflexively knocks her head off. While she rushes to pick it up, Errol feels disappointed that the Black School doesn't have any promotional exams. Latalia explains that they used to have one in the past, but that changed after their school's system collapsed. As she complains about the lack of students, Errol notices how empty the building is. He then asks her what's behind the back door of the reading room, because the room on the other side is completely empty. Latalia reveals that the room is actually a testing lab where a member can test their black magic. While other schools can freely test magic outdoors, black magic has to be used indoors since it shortens people's lifespans. With an empty room available, Errol decides to use it as a demolition arena to try out advanced spells. Later, he takes out a book inside the empty room, but finds it strangely unfamiliar. As Errol opens it, the book suddenly starts glowing and blinds his eyes. However, when the glow disappears, the book is left completely empty. Errol realizes the book's magical glow has leaked into the air, so he starts looking for it because the aura feels evil. He then sees a man floating in the air, who thanks him for letting him escape. When Errol asks if he's a demon, the man confirms it. The demon thanks Errol since he's the only person in years who bothered touching the book that was sealing it. To thank Errol for his favor, the demon offers to give him a gift. Errol tells him he isn't interested, so the demon smirks menacingly. He tells Errol he needs a flesh and blood sacrifice to return home to the demon realm before lunging to attack him. Errol easily blocks the demon's attack before retaliating with his own wand. As he tries to use an explosion spell, it fails to work, so the demon reveals he has trapped him inside a magic sealing barrier. Seeing that magic is useless, Errol chooses to fight directly. He uses his wand like a baseball bat and easily cleaves through the demon's head in one strike. In shock, the demon quickly reconnects its head. The vampire thinks Errol is a magic swordsman, but Errol tells him he's actually classless and immediately starts pummeling him. As the vampire takes his constant hits, he tells Errol that his physical attacks won't work. However, Errol keeps going like a maniac, unleashing millions of slashes on the overwhelmed vampire. Surprised that it is surviving, Errol keeps up his onslaught. Soon, the demon is forced to shrink itself to preserve its mana until Errol forces it to shrink to the size of a rat. Finally, the demon admits defeat and begs him to stop, so Errol agrees. While the demon feels overjoyed, Errol puts a strange seal on its belly, explaining that he has turned it into his slave. As the demon tries to resist, its entire body lights on fire, so Errol explains it'll suffer intense pain every time it thinks about rebelling against him. Just then, Latalia walks over to check out the commotion and is startled when she spots the demon, but Errol calmly explains that she doesn't need to worry because he turned it into his familiar. A little while later, Errol goes out to meet the kids, who congratulate him on all his promotions. There, they also bully his poor vampire pet, Maddie, but Errol lets him do whatever they want. Errol then tells Maddie to buy some lunch, so he leaves after getting burnt again. While Maddie goes to the cafeteria, he swears to break free of Errol's contract and make him pay. 6 months later, all 6 schools' headmasters sit together for a meeting. There, an official explains to all the headmasters that their schools will get a yearly budget and sponsorship based on their number of students and staff. As he reads the Black School's budget, the headmaster, Blag, complains that his school has gotten a 40% cut in resources. The official reminds him that his Black School's contributions are much lower than all the others, so it's only fair that they get fewer resources. While Blag feels upset that he can't fund his research anymore, the Red School's headmaster, Redora, taunts him for playing around with his child's childish, evil spells. Meanwhile, the White School's headmaster, Guido, points out that black magic is inherently dangerous, so they should consider removing the school entirely. Luckily, the official explains he won't be making such a big move during this meeting, and tells them that his budget is subject to one last change, as he reveals that the schools can receive an increase if they perform well during the upcoming 6-school magic contest. He tells Blag he'll give him the same amount as last year if he wins, angered by his unfair offering. Blag realizes they're trying to completely destroy his school. Back with group, Errol wonders what the upcoming Magelord Festival is going to be like. The kids tell him that the Magelord Festival is the biggest in their city, with the 6-school magic competition being its grand highlight. Kaido asks Errol if he's going to participate, so he reveals he's going to fight in the rookie division, excited to see his abilities. The kids start arguing over which magic he should use. However, Errol tells them he won't limit himself to one magic, but Maddie wonders which school he'll represent. Errol tells him that the headmasters have called him for a meeting the next morning, so he'll probably learn about it there. Seeing Maddie's interest in the festival, Errol wonders if he likes it, but he acts like demons don't care about human festivals. Elsewhere, that night, Blag draws a strange magic circle on the ground, mumbling about showing everyone the real power of black magic. As he summons the demon realm's strongest monster, a blob of writhing flesh appears from the circle. However, it immediately devours Blag, much to his shock. Moments later, the blob completely absorbs him, free to reign over the helpless magic city. The next day, the freakish living blob moves forward as it swallows all the monsters that Blag captured for experiments. A bit later that morning, Maddie wakes Errol up to start the day, and Errol mentions that he was just dreaming about all the things he lived through back in school. Sometime later, in the Green School's yard, the head teachers gather to pick their students for the upcoming competition. Since Blag is so late, the others wonder if he even has a student to recommend. While all the teachers argue over which ace they should send out, Errol eventually shows up at the scene to find out which school he's supposed to represent. As soon as Errol approaches the group of teachers, every one of them immediately declares to the rest that he's the one chosen to represent their school. Before any of them can clear their confusion, heavy footsteps start approaching the school. Even Errol gets surprised by this strange sound. Nearby, Kufa and the others are helping with the festival preparations when they also notice the strange monster. The slime climbs over the wall. The kids see the monsters it swallowed struggling inside its body. Horrified, all the students scatter from the area, while Errol takes to the sky to deal with the monster. Meanwhile, Royce stays behind to hold off the slime. As he uses a fire lance, the spell harmlessly bounces off the slime's body. Since normal attacks won't work, Royce decides to use a stronger eruption spell. However, before he can even use it, the slime's tentacles shoot out to grab him. Luckily, Dione picks up Royce and flies away before the slime can devour him. Glad to be safe, Royce thanks her. Since the slime lost its previous target, it keeps charging and chases Colette and the others. Suddenly, Colette trips on the ground, with no one nearby to help her. Kufa tries to block the slime with an ice wall, but it shatters it like it was made of glass. Then, Kaido attacks it with an eruption spell, but the slime takes it head-on with 0 damage. Colette wonders if this is the end for her. However, she remembers Errol's words to never give up, so she tries her best to drive the slime off with a tornado spell. Unfortunately, the attack doesn't do anything to the slime, so Colette thinks she at least tried her best to save her own life. Just as the slime's tentacle stretches out toward the kids, Errol suddenly slices through it with his wand. He turns back to praise the kids for standing up to the monster, and soon after, the rest of the teachers gather around him as well. Once the teachers arrive, they tell the kids to escape, so Errol wonders if he's allowed to fight with them, confident in their abilities. The headmasters all tell him to stand back. Watching the strange slime advancing towards them, they realize it must have been summoned by the Black School. As they all think about scolding Blag for his stunt, they wonder how to defeat the slime's magic resistance first, thinking that the slime is only strong enough to deflect the students' weak magic. The blue headmaster and Guido both attack the slime. However, it easily deflects their full power skills, leaving them completely stunned. Then, the red and green headmaster scorch the slime with a combination fire tornado, but it still lives through the powerful spell. Watching the slime shrug off the magic, the green headmaster thinks it's actually devouring their magic instead of resisting it. Since they can't defeat the slime with their strength, the yellow headmaster traps it with giant earth walls. Somehow, the slime starts breaking through the wall, so the teachers wonder how to handle handle it. One of them suggests attacking the slime with so much mana that it bursts. However, another headmaster points out that if the slime ends up absorbing all their mana, it'll become even bigger and stronger. Soon, the slime completely breaks out of the earth wall. Watching the fight from a distance, Errol realizes that he already knows all of the spells his teachers just used. While he thinks there is nothing more to learn in the City of Magic, Maddie asks him if they'll continue watching the battle from the side. Since he thinks that the teachers could still have some hidden spells, Errol decides to continue watching for now. Maddie nods, wondering how a gluttony slime escaped from the demon realm into the human world. Suddenly, Errol chokes him, demanding that he explain where this kind of slime even comes from. Maddie quickly agrees to tell him everything and explains that the slime can absorb any kind of magic just to grow bigger. He also reveals that magic happens to be the slime's favorite food, so it can grow much stronger by absorbing more. Errol wonders what would happen if the slime got attacked by a magic too strong to absorb. Maddie laughs, thinking that no one can use a spell with so much power. He then tells Errol that physical attacks and weapons also get swallowed by the slime's body, but Errol still thinks he has a shot at defeating it, so he gets down on the ground and summons a sword to fight. Maddie wonders why he is using a physical weapon since he's a magician, so Errol reminds him that he's fully capable of wielding a sword. Maddie feels insulted that he got his butt kicked by a magic wand, and Errol tells him to help him fight the slime. Nearby, the slime continues to advance towards the city, and the teachers wonder if their hometown is doomed. The green headmaster proposes evacuating the entire city, but suddenly, Errol descends from the sky toward the slime at incredible speed. He unleashes a sword technique called Dragon Fang Slash. A lightning dragon materializes and rips into the slime, while all the students from the school watch the battle unfold from afar. Watching Errol safe and sound, Maddie is shocked that the slime couldn't swallow his sword. However, Errol feels disappointed that his attack didn't defeat the big monster. Behind him, the magic headmasters also appear and ask Errol if he's a swordsman. When he explains that he doesn't have a class at all, they're all left stunned. Errol tells the teachers to flee the area since the slime will just devour their attacks. Hearing that the slime loves magic, the green headmaster realizes that the slime is headed towards their school's main building since that's where their students are gathered. As the teachers think about helping Errol, he tells them to remain behind since they'd only get in his way. Although they feel worried about letting a kid handle things, Errol reassures them that he can do it. Finally, the teachers leave the area and return to the students. Back on the ground, the slime recovers the damage from Errol's attack. Maddie grins smugly, feeling proud that Errol's attacks couldn't defeat a fellow demon. Errol threatens to feed him to the slime if he doesn't shape up. Ready to teach him a lesson, Errol hangs Maddie in front of the slime, but it actually moves away from them. While Errol thinks it's because Maddie tastes like crap, Maddie thinks that the slime must be scared to fight them together. Since Errol doesn't want the fat blob to go around terrorizing everyone, he traps it with an earth wall spell. He then flies close to the walls and summons some golems. As the 4 golems surround the slime, Errol unleashes a boosted infinite break attack along with them. Their combined attack shreds through the slime, and the students cheer for Errol to finish off the monster. Watching him use powerful sword attacks alongside magic spells, the teachers wonder if a classless person can truly pull off these stunning feats. Meanwhile, Errol's golems crumble to bits from the pressure of using their powerful attacks. However, the slime still starts regenerating from the blow, so Maddie starts taunting Errol for his failure. This time, Errol decides to try magic, so Maddie mocks him since the slime absorbs any kind of spell. Still, Errol thinks he can defeat the slime if he just overloads it with enough mana, so he creates a magic circle. Watching the red circle, Maddie thinks he's just using plain fire magic and waits for him to fail miserably. Errol tells him it's not just red magic and summons 5 more different magic circles. Shocked, Maddie wonders how he can use 6 different magic elements at once. However, Errol goes a step further and merges all of the unique magic circles into a single one. In a flashback, he remembers his father warning him to never use those unpredictable magic circles unless he was facing a life or death situation. Errol asked Leon why this magic was so dangerous, so he explained that these circles are combined with an incredible amount of mana to create a continuous chain of combined attacks. Since this combination requires incredible magic precision, if the user loses control of their mana, it would result in a massive explosion that would nuke the entire area. Although Errol knows he could be risking such an explosion, he has no choice but to use the magic against this indestructible slime. As he tries to complete the magic circle, even Errol feels the difficulty of manipulating 6 powerful magic circles at once. Soon, the slime's tentacles grow closer, and Maddie waits for Errol to be defeated. Suddenly, a bright glow pours into Errol, and he looks back to see all of the magic school's students and teachers offering their own mana to help him stabilize his circle. With their assistance, Errol finally completes the elimination spell and erases the black slime from its miserable existence. Shocked that Errol actually defeated the slime, Maddie feels his world turning upside down. Suddenly, Errol grabs him and reminds him of his arrogant words just a few minutes ago. Quickly, Maddie changes his expression, acting like he was just joking back then. After punishing Maddie, Errol flies down to the crater where the slime once was. While he feels exhausted after using all of his magic, the headmasters quickly approach him. Knowing that the elimination magic he just used is a legendary spell only a mage lord can cast, the teachers wonder how Errol could use it. They all question how Errol managed to grow so powerful at such a young age, and the yellow headmaster points out that none of them even know the proper way to become mage lord. Errol explains to them that he's only a classless person, but he learned the elimination magic from his father, who happens to be a mage lord. Shocked, the teachers wonder who Errol's dad is, and wonder if he's the son of the famous Leon. Errol nods, surprised that they actually know his dad. The Red School headmaster explains that Leon was actually his classmate, which meant he always came in second place after him. Although everyone thought that Leon would become their school's headmaster, he just vanished without a trace. Then, the Blue School's headmaster also recalls having a talented junior like Leon, who disappeared for no reason. Errol explains that his father also used to study in all the magic schools, but he left them after mastering their techniques. Then, the Green headmaster asks Errol if he knows how to become a mage lord. Errol tells the teachers they just need to master all 6 magics to their peak in order to become a mage lord. Since the City of Magic divides its magics into 6 schools, the teachers realize that none of their students can ever become mage lords, even if they master one type. As they all realize they still need the Black School to reach the pinnacle of magic, Errol disappears from in front of them. Nearby, he finds a tiny baby slime among the rubble, which survived his powerful attack. Although Maddie suggests eliminating the dangerous slime, Errol decides to take it as a familiar. The next day, in his room, he manages to tame the black slime and decides to name it Wob Wob. Watching Wob Wob clean Errol's trash like a vacuum cleaner, Maddie feels frustrated that it has become a servant. Maddie wonders why Wob Wob became his friend despite getting hurt so much. So Errol reminds him that slimes can't feel pain. Since Wob Wob probably took their fight as a game, it doesn't mind being Errol's familiar. Suddenly, Kaido and the girls barge into the room, afraid that Errol is going to leave their city. Errol wonders where they heard about this, and the kids explain that they learned through their teachers. They then beg him to stay until graduation, but he reminds them that there's nothing left for him to learn here. Seeing him ready to leave without any hesitation, the kids think Errol is being too cold to them. Finally, he offers to visit the Magic City every now and then to spend time with them. So the kids ask what he plans to do once he leaves. He says that he'll return home first, and after that, he'll make his way to the City of Monsters. Surprised, Kaido wonders why he's going to the meeting point of all the world's monsters. Errol explains that he needs to go there since he has a new monster as a familiar, so the kids finally realize that he adopted the black slime. As Errol holds out the slime towards them, the kids feel terrified, but he reassures them that it's safe. Colette thinks that Wob Wob looks like the gluttony slime that destroyed their city, but Errol acts like it just has a similar color. Relieved that the slime is safe, the kids start petting it. Elsewhere, an official yells at all the school's headmasters for letting a talented kid like Errol leave their city. However, they all remind him that even if they tried to force Errol to stay, he would just stomp them all and leave. Just then, Blag tells them they can just create a new mage lord with Errol's information. Watching him reappear out of thin air, everyone gets shocked. Blag explains that although his body was devoured by the slime, his soul still remains. Since he knows that black magic is essential for creating a mage lord, he looks forward to working with the rest of the headmasters, who wonder if the city will be okay with someone like him around. Sometime later, Errol says goodbye to the 3 kids and heads back home. As he leaves, a strange woman watches him from the shadows. That was episode 11. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.